Chapter 557. Mu Wanra screamed at the top of her lungs, "Shut up! Yin Shirshir, shut up! Have you said enough? Is it enough? Not enough." Yin Shirshir interrupted her expressionlessly as her lips curled into a cold arc. "Shouldn't I be asking you this? More than 10 years, it should be enough. Aren't you going to return the things that don't belong to you to its rightful owner?" Mu Wanru clenched her fists tightly. Suddenly, she let out a shrill laugh. A look of disdain surfaced on her heavily made-up face. "Who's going to believe your words? I am the real young madam of the Mu family. Now and in the future. Yin Shirshir, you don't have the right to fight with me." Yin Shirshir's eyes were as cold as ice, but she said coldly, "Yes, I don't have the right to fight with you because these things originally belonged to me." She slowly walked towards Mu Wanru until she was right in front of her. Yin Shirshir suddenly grabbed Mu Wanru's collar and gave her a tight slap across her face. "The one who doesn't have the right to fight with me is you." Mu Wanru was shocked and angry after being slapped so suddenly. The anger in her eyes was about to burst out. "You dare to hit me? Why wouldn't I dare?" Yin Shirshir's lips were cold as she gave her another slap across her face. Mu Wanru grabbed her collar with the back of her hand. But for some reason, Yin Shirshir looked weak, but no matter how Mu Wanru pushed her, she didn't move at all. What Mu Wanru didn't know was that Yin Shirshir had learned some judo when she was young. Even if she didn't master it, it was easy for her to deal with a weak woman like Mu Wanru. "Yin Shirshir, you dare to hit me, you will regret it." "Regret? I'm just teaching AB*TCH a lesson, why would I regret it?" Yin Shirshir raised her hand high, her eyes filled with sorrow. "How dare you? I dare you to hit me." Mu Wanru threatened in a shrill voice. "I'm pregnant now. If you dare to hit me, can you bear the consequences?" Yin Shirshir's eyes froze and her movements froze in an instant. Her face seemed to have frozen. "What? Didn't you hear me clearly? I'm pregnant. If you hit me and hurt the baby in my belly, can you afford the consequences?" Mu Wanru saw her stiff expression and smiled proudly. "Are you trying to trick me again? You were diagnosed with infertility a long time ago." Yin Shirshir obviously didn't believe her words so easily. "Why would I lie to you? Didn't you see it last time? I just found out that I have morning sickness." Mu Wanru admired Yin Shirshir's cold expression with satisfaction. Even though she said that she didn't believe her, her eyes clearly showed that she didn't believe her. "You don't believe me, right? Weren't you diagnosed with infertility?" Yin Shirshir stared straight at her, trying to find a trace of suspicion on her face. "Don't doctors make mistakes in their diagnoses?" Mu Wanru deliberately provoked her and pretended to be happy. "I didn't dare to believe it at first, but it's the truth. Yin Shirshir, I'm pregnant with Mu Yaja's flesh and blood." The expression on Yin Shirshir's face cracked bit by bit. The despair in her heart was like a tidal wave, swallowing up the last bit of faith she had left. Chapter 558. Yin Shirshir stared straight at her. Her face was so pale that it was drained of blood. Mu Wanru stared at the change of expression on her face and suddenly laughed mockingly. "It can't be, Yin Shirshir. Don't tell me you've fallen in love with him. Do you think he really loves you? Do you think he really cares about you? He's just playing with you." Mu Wanru appreciated the expression on her face gradually turning cold as if her heart was dead. She felt even more proud. Men always say sweet words to women. The words they say are sweeter than honey, but when they're heartless, it's like stabbing a knife into your heart. Will you actually believe a man's sweet words? He already has a fiancé, and that's me. Will you believe a man like him? The cold and mocking words were undoubtedly a cold thorn that pierced into her heart and made her bleed. Yin Shirshir looked like she was struggling. She forced herself to ignore Mu Wanru's words and only thought that she was trying to drive a wedge between them. "But, if he really has any feelings for you, then why didn't he break off the engagement with me?" Mu Wanru smiled cruelly. "Why did he sleep with me while having an ambiguous relationship with you and make me pregnant with his child? I'm the legal wife, and you're just a mistress who can't be seen in public. He slept with her. But didn't he say that she was the only woman he had ever had? Was it all fake? Was he lying to her? Yin Shishir's eyes were struggling and her face was flustered. She was skeptical of Mu Wanru's words. Obviously, she didn't fully believe it. Previously, he had an ambiguous relationship with you because he thought that I couldn't bear a child for him and felt that you were different from other women. He was just playing with you. Now that I'm pregnant, do you think you can still shake my position? You still want to be promoted? It's undoubtedly a pipe dream. Everything you have now is clearly mine. You're clearly the one who took away my things. Yin Shishir felt a lump in her throat. Her eyes were bloodshot as she stared at her blankly. Does it matter if it's yours or mine? The most important thing is that no one will believe you. Just like 15 years ago. No one would believe her. Yin Shishir bit her lower lip hard as the nightmare from 15 years ago flashed before her eyes like a merry-go-round. No one will believe me? Yes. No one will believe your one-sided words. As if hypnotized, Mu Wanru stared straight at her, cruelly enunciating every word. Everyone will only think that you're a thief, a mistress, a third party who interfered in someone else's marriage. Yin Shishir's hands fell weakly to the ground. With a pale smile, she was pushed away by Mu Wanru. She staggered a step and her body was caught off guard as she fell backwards. However, she fell into a warm and powerful embrace at the right time. Then, a firm and deep voice said above her head, "I believe you." Yin Shishir was awakened by the voice. Her blank eyes regained some focus. She raised her head and saw Gu Xing's calm and gentle face. His gaze fell on her pale and bloodless face, revealing a hint of indulgence. "I believe you." Even if everyone in the world doubted her and didn't believe her, he believed every word she said unconditionally. Mu Wanru saw that it was Gu Xing's and was unprepared. She looked at him nervously, not knowing how much of their conversation he had heard. Chapter 559. Gu Xing's raised his head and glanced at Mu Wanru. His voice suddenly became cold and gloomy. "Why aren't you getting lost?" Mu Wanru was surprised by his attitude. He actually yelled at her because of Yin Shishir? She immediately said angrily, "Gu Xing's, you actually get lost." Gu Xing's lost his patience. His eyes were cold and sharp. Mu Wanru's anger could not be quelled, but knowing the superstar's background, she could not be bothered to bicker with him. She had achieved her goal, so she was not willing to stay here any longer. With a snort, she stomped away in her high heels. Gu Xing's lowered his head to look at Yin Shishir. He saw that she lowered her head and her shoulders were trembling slightly. He called her name a few times, but he did not get a response. "Shishir? What's wrong with you?" Gu Xing's was helpless. He held her face with both hands. When his fingertips touched her cheeks, he touched a patch of skin. Gu Xing's was shocked. He bent down slightly. Yin Shishir turned her face away. She brushed his hands away and avoided his touch. She lowered her head even more and turned her back to him. A trembling and forbearing voice came. "Gu Xing's, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Go and accompany your friend." Yin Shishir bit her lower lip so hard that it almost tore through the skin. She endured and swallowed all the broken sobs into her stomach. She did not want anyone to see her in such a sorry and vulnerable state. It was so embarrassing. What was the use of crying? She was in a position to fight back. But when she heard Mu Wanru say that she was pregnant with Mu Yaja's child, she suddenly lost all her strength and the strength to fight back. She could not find any position to fight back. It was so unnecessary. She did not even have the courage to question the truth of Mu Wanru's words. She was afraid of hearing a devastating answer. Once a person was faced with something they didn't dare to face, they would always be cowardly. She didn't dare to think about it. She was afraid that she would be crushed by the cruel reality. It was only at this moment that she saw her own heart clearly. It turned out that she really seemed to have invested so much in that man, which was unexpected. Therefore, when Muwanra proudly announced to her that she was pregnant, she was immediately defeated. She didn't believe it at first, but after thinking about it carefully, Muwanra might really be pregnant. That day, she clearly saw that Muwanra did have morning sickness. It was a very real reaction, and it didn't seem to be an act at all. She had been pregnant before and knew that there were some things that couldn't be expressed through acting. That was a sign of early pregnancy. She should have thought of it earlier. Since she was really pregnant, if it wasn't Muyaja's child, whose child could it be? After all, she was his fiancée. Why couldn't he touch her when it was perfectly justified? Muyaja should have known. Muwanra should have been eager to tell him about such a good thing. Since he already knew, why would he still make such a vague promise to her? Could it be that her feelings were so easily played with? Yunshishir thought of Muyaja leaning against her ear and making those promises. She felt that it was extremely funny. She pursed her lips and raised her eyebrows. She wanted to laugh, but when the laughter escaped from the corner of her mouth, it became a trembling sob. You only know how to cry. You only know how to cry. What are you crying for? She gritted her teeth and wiped away her tears forcefully. She really hated being so weak. She really hated being so pretentious. But she wasn't a third party. Chapter 560. Hadn't it been like this for the past 15 years? She was already used to it. Muwanra was pregnant. So what? Did it have anything to do with her whose child she was pregnant with? She didn't care at all. She didn't care at all. She was just playing around with Muyaja. Who was falling in love with him? I will tell the world that you are Muyaja's woman. Sweet nothings were just lies. Did she really believe it? It was all a lie, all a lie, it was all a lie, it was all a lie. Why did she believe it? Why did she really believe it? Did she believe that he would promise her a world? That he would tell the world that she was his woman? Promises were not credible at all. They were so fragile that they couldn't withstand a single blow. She knew from the beginning that a man like Muyaja was dangerous to her. He was a taboo. She shouldn't have any feelings for him. But she still let herself fall in love with him without hesitation. Did Muyaja know who Muwanra was? She probably knew about it. Gu Xingze stood behind her. His eyes fell on her trembling shoulders. Even if he couldn't see her expression now, he guessed that she was probably sad. He didn't hear much of their conversation just now. But he vaguely heard the sentence, "Everyone will only think that you are a thief, a mistress, a third party in someone else's marriage." He suddenly felt that this woman seemed to be hopelessly in love with Muyaja. She must care a lot about him, right? How much did she care about him? He didn't know, but it must be to the point that she was crazy with jealousy. When did it happen? He also cared a lot about this woman. Qin Zhou had told him about Yunshishir's background. 6 years ago, she was the surrogate mother that the Mu family had chosen out of thousands of people. That meant that she was the real biological mother of the young master of the Mu family. As for the reason why she did that, the reason she became a surrogate mother was probably because her adoptive father's family was in trouble. She was forced to sign the contract by her adoptive mother. Out of gratitude, she didn't reject it strongly. That was what Qin Zhou said. It was said that artificial insemination had failed at the beginning, so they had to use the most primitive method. For a girl to put down her dignity to repay her adoptive father's kindness, she spread her body under a strange man and was forced to do whatever he wanted. This girl was really stupid. He was hopelessly stupid. But what caught him off guard was that she was deeply in love with Muyaja. Gu Xingze furrowed his brows. He suddenly reached out his hand and forcefully pulled her shoulder, forcing himself not to look at her disheveled expression. He pressed his hand against the back of her head and pressed her head against his shoulder. He raised his head and didn't look at how she was enduring the pain. He only said indifferently, "Be good, I won't look at you." Yunshishir's body stiffened, leaving only the sound of her breathing. "If you want to cry, just cry." Gu Xingze's voice was as gentle as a feather. His thin lips blew on her forehead, soft and warm. Crying doesn't mean that you're weak. You don't have to restrain yourself too much, okay? Yun Shishir struggled at first, but Gu Xingze was so strong that she almost couldn't resist. She buried her face in his shoulder and made an almost inaudible sobbing sound. His scalding tears almost soaked his clothes. Chapter 561. Gu Xingze's heart ached because of this. He felt that this woman was hopelessly stupid. She actually put herself in such a lowly position because of a man. At the same time, he also felt that he was hopeless. Even though she had never looked at him, he still cared so much about her happiness, anger, and sorrow. He really lost to her. He was hopeless. Gu Xingze raised his face. His left ear was filled with the piercing metal music in the bar, while his right ear was filled with her low and careful sobbing. An inexplicable sense of powerlessness filled his entire body. He suddenly felt a little indignant. Thus, he held her face with both hands and stared at her face. "Can't I do it?" His low voice was extremely magnetic. His deep gaze was fixed on her face, and his brows were slightly furrowed. "Must it be him? Can't I?" he asked. Yun Shishir was startled by his sudden question. She did not know what was going on. "If Mu Yaja can do it, I can do it too. I can also give you everything that he can give you. I can also give you what he can't give you or promise you." Gu Xingze said almost in one breath, then observed the changes in her expression. "So, can't I do it?" Yun Shishir's gaze was a little dazed. Her eyes were wide open, and there were tears on her eyelashes. She couldn't understand the meaning of his words. The expression on her face froze because of the shock. Gu Xingze's handsome face leaned slightly closer to her face. His thin lips were printed on the corner of her eyes, gently kissing away her tears. Because of this unguarded kiss, Yun Shishir's expression became even more stiff. Gu Xingze didn't stop there. His delicate and soft kiss suddenly landed on her eyelashes, sucking away her tears. Then, it landed on the tip of her nose, lightly touching it, like a dragonfly skimming the water. But just as his kiss was about to land on her lips, Yun Shishir suddenly came back to her senses and pushed him away in a panic. "Don't be like this." Yun Shishir's breathing quickened. She turned her body slightly to the side, unable to bear his sudden action. "I just treat you as my senior. I don't have any other thoughts." Gu Xingze was stunned for a moment, then smiled without saying anything. After a while, he said calmly, I know." He knew. Even so, he still wanted to fight for it. Gu Xingze's expression suddenly turned a little desolate. She looked at him, feeling uneasy and guilty at the same time. She could feel his feelings, but she couldn't face it calmly. Towards him, there was only admiration and respect, nothing else. Since he didn't have any, he couldn't get close to him and give him any hope, only to disappoint him again. She couldn't afford it. He saw that she was a little flustered, as if she was caught off guard by his sudden kiss. He reached out and gently stroked her hair. "I'm sorry, I went too far." "It's okay," she said uneasily. But in her heart, she was shocked by Gu Xingze's uncontrollable confession. Yun Shishir turned around, struggling for a moment. Then, she looked at Gu Xingze's face and forced a smile. Let's go back." With that, she walked towards the booth by herself. Gu Xingze helplessly pulled the corners of his mouth and followed behind her. The two of them walked one after the other, but each had their own thoughts. If she turned around at this moment, she would definitely see the disappointment and pain on his face. Chapter 562. Along the way, Yun Shishir lowered her head and walked forward, bumping into people from time to time. One of the men had just walked down from the dance floor. Yun Shishir lowered her head and walked hurriedly, but she suddenly bumped into his arms. The man held her shoulders. When he lowered his head and saw that the woman who bumped into his arms was so pure and seductive, he thought that she was deliberately trying to attract his attention and throw herself into his arms. Yun Shishir raised her head and saw that she had bumped into someone. She immediately apologized and wanted to leave, but the man grabbed her wrist. What's wrong? Didn't you throw yourself into my arms? Why are you leaving? Are you trying to play hard to get with me? When Gu Xingze saw this, he was slightly annoyed. However, she was the one who was annoyed. She only cared about lowering her head and rushing forward, leaving him far behind. It was as if she was avoiding him like he was a snake or a scorpion. Was she avoiding him? Was it because he seemed to have lost control of himself and said those words? He went forward and put his arm around Yunshusher's shoulders. When the man saw this, he wanted to continue pestering her. Gu Xingze lost his patience and kicked him aside expressionlessly. Get lost. Don't get in the way. After that, he expressionlessly grabbed Yunshusher's wrist and walked away. Yunshusher was led away by him, but he used so much strength that it almost hurt her. Yunshusher cried out softly in pain. She raised her head and opened her mouth, but she saw that his jaw was clenched, his thin lips were pursed, and his brows were furrowed. His eyes were filled with cold anger, and his expression was very unpleasant. She felt that he seemed to be angry. But, why was he angry? She clearly didn't do anything. Gu Xingze, you're angry with me, you don't have to deliberately avoid me. Gu Xingze suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked down at her, interrupting her words. If you like me, you like me. If you don't like me, you don't like me. I just don't like to suppress myself. Yunshusher was stunned. I won't force you to like me, so you don't have to avoid me like this. Do you understand? I know, Gu Xingze rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. He suddenly realized that he had lost his composure. I'm sorry, he practically carried her all the way back to the booth. He walked very quickly with his long legs and big strides. He walked in front of Yunshusher, who was following behind him, couldn't keep up with his footsteps and stumbled. She allowed him to grip her wrist so tightly that it was as if he wanted to break her wrist. Back in the booth, the two of them sat down. Yunshusher deliberately kept a distance from Gu Xingze and sat far away from him. Gu Xingze sensed that she was trying to avoid him, but he did not point it out. He thought that his actions just now must have frightened her. She probably didn't have any thoughts about him. From the beginning to the end, she had maintained a distance from him. Many newcomers who had just debuted couldn't wait to get close to him when they saw him. Many female celebrities even wanted to use his resources to climb up the ranks. However, this woman kept a distance from him when he tried to get close to her. Even if she wanted to make use of him, it would have been fine. However, she rejected him so cleanly, which made him feel a little dejected. Women were really hard to understand. The people in the booth were originally fooling around, but when they saw this man return to his seat with a cold expression, the atmosphere became slightly tense. Chapter 563. Even Yi Minglan couldn't help but be a little startled. She observed his tense expression and wondered who it was that had angered this man who had always controlled himself to the point that he couldn't restrain his anger at all. Yi Minglan saw that his expression was solemn and saw that Yunshusher was sitting so far away from him. She thought to herself, could it be that the two of them had an argument? That was probably it. When they returned to the booth, the two of them didn't speak a word. Li Qingze was originally having fun, but because of him, it was as if a basin of ice water had been poured over his head. He had completely lost his interest and even felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Now, Gu Xingze was just sitting there, but he could already feel this terrifying aura spreading to every inch of the booth. His aura was already overwhelming. Yi Minglan saw that everyone present was secretly sizing him up without saying a word. She couldn't help but want to ease the atmosphere, so she leaned over and poured him a glass of wine. She smiled and said, Xingze, what's wrong with you? As she spoke, she lowered her voice and said, just now, I was too willful. Don't be angry with me anymore, okay? I'll toast to you with this glass. After she finished speaking, Yi Minglan downed the glass of wine in one gulp. Gu Xingze didn't even look at her and downed the glass of wine she offered. The wine glass landed heavily on the table. He used so much force that the bottom of the glass almost cracked. Yunshusher sensed that he had made a huge commotion and knew that he was angry. She felt wronged and guilty, but she didn't know how to explain it. She just didn't want to consume his feelings. Was that wrong too? Li Qingze sat beside her and Yun Shishir immediately sat further away. Li Qingze smiled and sat closer to her. Yun Shishir glared at him angrily. What exactly do you want? I'm sorry. Just now, it was my fault. What I said just now was in a fit of anger. Please don't take it to heart. I have a bad temper, and when my temper flares up, my words are unpleasant. If you're still angry, you can scold me. Li Qingze begged for mercy pitifully. He poured himself a cup of wine and said with a smile, I'll finish this cup of wine first as an apology. Thus, he picked up the goblet and drained it in one gulp. He even showed her the bottom of the goblet, indicating that not a single drop was left. Yun Shishir turned her face away and ignored him. Li Qingze immediately brought over a cup of mixed wine and smiled at her, Don't be angry. I ordered a drink for you. There's a little bit of red wine in it. The alcohol content is very low, but the taste is very unique. It has always been this shop's signature drink. Take it as my apology to you. Seeing that Yun Shishir was still ignoring him, Li Qingze said pitifully, Please don't be angry. I was a jerk just now. If you want me to slap you, just say it, that's enough. Yun Shishir sighed. I'll drink it, but can you stop bothering me after drinking it? What a big tone. As long as you forgive me, I'll definitely stop bothering you. I forgive you. As long as he stopped bothering her, anything was fine. Thus, she carefully picked up the wine glass. The lemon-yellow liquid in the glass swirled gently, making her suddenly recall the nightmare of being drunk. That awful taste made her feel nauseous. Chapter 564. She couldn't help but take another sip. She licked her lips and suddenly understood why so many people loved to mix drinks. It was indeed quite delicious. However, even though the alcohol content was low, her cheeks flushed red after taking a sip. Li Qingze stared at her, and he was about to go into a daze. However, he didn't know that his actions were all seen by a pair of deep eyes. Gu Xingze glanced at them from the corner of his eyes. His eyes were dark as he lazily lifted the wine glass with one hand and pressed the edge of the glass against his lips. There was a hint of contemplation and judgment in his eyes. Unknowingly, it was already 1:00 in the morning. Perhaps it was because of the alcohol, these untactful young masters also began to try to talk to Gu Xingze. Loud music, enchanting smoke, a few rounds of greeting and sending each other off. Their ugly faces were full of hypocritical smiles. Who didn't want to have a relationship with the Gu family? In the past, they didn't have the opportunity. Now that such a person was sitting in front of them, how could they not be tempted? At first, they didn't dare to act rashly. However, after half a round of drinking, they became bolder. Gu Xingze leaned on the sofa expressionlessly. He coldly admired their dissolute behavior and found it really annoying. He lowered his eyes slightly and hid the playful but cold sharpness in his eyes. The corners of his lips curled up in a mocking smile. It wasn't that he was acting like a big shot. These rich kids really didn't know how to weigh their own status. They were young but ignorant and incompetent. They were addicted to the 5 poisons and relied on their parents' family business to squander money. They lived a life of drunkenness and indulged in a life of luxury. If such people were to step into this cruel circle, they would either become small shrimps that were swallowed by a big fish or become a chess piece that was controlled by others. One wrong move and the whole game would be lost. No matter how big the family business was, it would collapse in an instant. There was no need to be too close to these people. Raising his wrist, he downed the glass of Hennessy in one gulp. Then, he stood up and walked to the side. He lowered his head and looked down at the little thing who was already curled up in a corner. He reached out to grab her arm and lifted her up. Then, he patted her head hard with his large palm and said in a low voice, "Let's go." Only then did Yun Shishir open her sleepy eyes. She carefully tasted a mouthful of wine and then curled up in a corner. Seeing that it was him, she suddenly revealed an innocent smile. Her laughter was like a gentle breeze blowing through a silver bell, crisp and pleasant to the ear. Gu Xingze could not help but frown slightly, but he was a little dazed by this seductive smile. After getting drunk, she had lost the innocence she had when she was sober. Instead, she had gained an enchanting charm. Half of her face seemed to have been dyed with peach blossoms. She was beautiful and moving. She wobbled as she tried to stand up, but her legs gave way. She stumbled and bumped into his chest. Ugh! She moaned softly and rubbed the tip of her nose in pain. It seemed like it hurt. Drunk? He suddenly glanced coldly at Li Qingze from the corner of his eyes. The latter's heart skipped a beat because of this cold glance. This man's gaze was too scary. Young Master Gu, I didn't make her drink. She didn't drink much and only took a sip. The alcohol content of that cocktail was pitifully low. It seems like she's allergic to alcohol. Li Qingze quickly explained. Gu Xingze ignored him. Chapter 565. As soon as he finished speaking, a few intoxicated men started shouting, "Young Master Gu, you're leaving just like that? We haven't put in enough effort." That's right. Let's go sing later, okay? Everyone is looking forward to seeing young Master Gu sing. One of the men even reached out and held Gu Xingze's shoulder. His smile was a little lecherous. Young Master Gu, are you planning to go back and indulge in the night of spring? His gaze fell on the woman in his arms, and the meaning in his eyes was unclear. Yi Minglan was instantly annoyed when she heard this. These imbeciles, how dare they make a joke about Gu Xingze? The man was already very drunk, and his actions became bolder. He patted Gu Xingze's shoulder again and teased, "This woman isn't worth young Master Gu's effort, right? If young Master Gu likes her, I'll give you some women. I guarantee that you'll like her." Gu Xingze turned his face expressionlessly. He lowered his gaze and stared coldly at the hand on his shoulder. His brows were slightly furrowed, and his cold gaze was as if he was looking at something filthy. The man couldn't help but sober up a little because of his sharp gaze. He immediately retracted his hand and shrunk his head back in fear. Yi Minglan was extremely angry. She still had a sweet smile on her face as she said to him, "Young Master Gu, thank you for coming today." "No need." Gu Xingze didn't even turn his head as he replied indifferently. He then pulled Yun Shishir into his arms. Yi Minglan's face instantly fell when he left with her. She turned around and swept her gaze across the crowd angrily. She was so angry that she laughed. A bunch of shameless idiots. "Io, what's wrong, Sister Minglan? Who made you angry again?" That's right, that's right. How did we embarrass you this time?" Yi Minglan pursed her lips coldly. "You're all really capable. How dare you say such things? You still want to claim your relationship with young Master Gu? What's his status and what's your status? Don't you know how to be more respectful? I'm really ashamed of you." Some people were unhappy when they heard this. "What do you mean by that? Isn't she just an actress? You don't know this, do you? Gu Xingze was the young master of the Gu family in Beijing. Haha. He was just an illegitimate child because his status in the Gu family was not as high as his brother, Gu Jinglian. However, Minglan, your words are too harsh." That's right, that's right. Don't be so harsh with your words. It's your birthday today, so we're here to support you. But don't be so overbearing. Don't make everyone unhappy." Yi Minglan's smile turned colder. "What do you think? You guys are really a bunch of idiots. How dare you make fun of young Master Gu? You've really disgraced me." Li Qingze's mood was also ruined by her. He said unhappily, "Isn't it just Gu Xingze? Is it necessary to treat us like this for him? I just can't stand that brat, he's so arrogant." Gu Jinglian was the head of the Gu family. I've never seen him put on such a face before. What right does he have to put on such a high and mighty attitude towards us? Chapter 566. Li Qingze was also a little angry. He had been suppressing his anger because of Gu Xingze and had nowhere to vent it. Now that he had been scolded by Yi Minglan, he finally exploded and roared out. Bah! Damn it! Yi Minglan, what do you mean? Young Master Gu is always fawning over him. What ability does he have? The Gu family? Haha. So what if he's from the Gu family? I heard that he's just the illegitimate son of old Master Gu's mistress outside. Does the Gu family think they can do whatever they want? Why? Does Gu Xingze think he can trample the Li family under his feet? Yi Minglan's eyes flashed with disdain. Trample? Not just trample. If Gu Xingze had such thoughts, he could easily crush the Li family. Li Qingze saw her look of disdain and contempt and sneered. He said rudely, Yi Minglan, my status is low and I'm not worthy of you, okay? After that, he took his coat and walked away without looking back. Alright, stop arguing. This birthday is so unlucky. Everyone, let's go. Sigh. Sister Minglan has high standards. We're not the crown prince of the Mu family or the young master of the Gu family. Sister Minglan definitely won't like us. Someone mocked and ridiculed. What do you mean? Nothing. We also think it's meaningless. Let's go. Everyone stood up. No one was willing to accompany them, which meant that the drinking stopped. Yi Minglan stood on the spot and looked at the people leaving. She was so angry that her whole body trembled. Outside the door, when Gu Xingze carried Yun Shishir into the car, she was already sleepy. She was curled up in a corner with her eyes closed. The air conditioning in the car was a little cold. He specially instructed the chauffeur to lower the air conditioning. The scenery outside the window kept passing by. The neon lights of the city were bustling. The nightlife of the young people had officially begun. Gu Xingze stretched out his hand and pulled Yun Shishir closer to him, allowing her to lean on his shoulder. He gently lowered his head and saw that her eyelashes were drooping. She seemed to be very sleepy. He raised his hand and gently brushed aside the messy hair on her forehead. Under the moonlight, her face was like jade and porcelain, bright and beautiful. But even though she was so close, there was still a strong sense of loneliness that surrounded him. Sometimes, the most strange thing was that the person you liked was clearly by your side, but you couldn't touch her heart. Gu Xingze raised his hand to touch her face, but the image of her hiding in the bar flashed across his eyes, and his movements suddenly stiffened. He smiled helplessly and slowly retracted his hand slowly. The moonlight cast a deep shadow on her face. Her eyes, which were covered by her bangs, were slowly opening. She was clearly awake, she was just pretending. Knock 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 knock. The knocks on the door were exceptionally clear in the quiet night. Yun Tianyu immediately woke up from the sofa and hurried to the door in his slippers. When he opened the door, he saw Gu Xingze standing at the door with Yun Shishir in his arms. The little lad's expression changed. Mommy. What happened to Mommy? Gu Xingze's heart skipped a beat when he saw the little lad. His expression froze. The little lad before him had a handsome face similar to Yun Shishir's. Was he her son? Chapter 567. With that, he pointed to the TV screen in the living room, which was still flashing with light. It was currently playing a movie starring Gu Xingze, Bamboo Dragonfly, which was also directed by Lin Fengtian. Gu Xingze was stunned for a moment before his lips curled up. He had seen this child before, and he looked exactly like the Mu family's young master. He guessed that this child was one of the twins and Yun Shishir's son. What a smart little brat. Gu Xingze returned to his senses and smiled. You're so cute. What's your name? Yun Tianyu. The little lad obediently put his hands behind his back and nervously looked at Yun Shishir, who was in his arms. He asked quizzically, what's wrong with Mommy? She drank. The corner of his lips twitched violently as he felt a little angry. She drank again. Stupid Mommy. She obviously can't hold her liquor, yet she still forced herself to drink. Gu Xingze carried Yun Shishir into the bedroom. When he walked out of the room, Yun Tianyu was standing behind him with an autograph book in his hand. With an obedient and elegant smile on his face, he looked just like a handsome little gentleman. Uncle Xingze, can you give me an autograph? He. I'm your little fan. Gu Xingze slowly squatted in front of him and lightly scratched his nose bridge. He teased him, so, you're my little fan? Can you sing my songs, then? Yes, but Yu is tone deaf. My singing is terrible. Yun Tianyu's bashful look amused him. Alright, little cutie. I'll give you an autograph. Gu Xingze smiled when he heard this. He took the pen from him and signed his name on the autograph book. Thank you, Uncle Xingze. Yun Tianyu's eyes darted around as he tilted his head and asked, Uncle Xingze, are you filming with my mommy now? Yes. That's right. I'm your mommy's colleague now. My mommy is so dumb. Uncle Xingze, you must take good care of her. If mommy gets bullied on set, you will be so sad. The little guy held his chest pitifully and looked worried. Gu Xingze was secretly surprised. This little fellow was really different from the rest. Other children of this age were still immature and couldn't even speak fluently. However, this child was not ordinary. He had a clever look in his eyes, and the way he spoke was particularly pleasing to the ears. What was even more commendable was that he doted on Yun Shishir very much. She was a sensible and obedient child. Gu Xingze nodded and said, Yu, don't worry. Uncle will take good care of your mommy. I won't let anyone bully her. Really? Really? It's a promise. Yun Tianyu stretched out his pinky. Gu Xingze immediately hooked his finger with the promise of a pinky promise. It's a deal. Why did mommy come back so late today? Yun Tianyu asked in a roundabout way. Gu Xingze looked apologetic. Yes. Everyone had a gathering, so I came back a little late. Yun Tianyu heaved a sigh of relief when he found out the reason for her late return. It turned out that she had a gathering. No wonder she came back so late. Her phone was switched off, and he could not get through to her. He was worried sick. Chapter 568. Yun Shishir raised her eyes to look at him. Her face was as white as a sheet. Yun Tianyu was slightly distracted. He nervously walked over and cupped Yun Shishir's face. His heart ached for her. Mommy, you don't look good. What's wrong? Did someone bully you? No. Mommy is lying. He fumed. Someone must have bullied mommy. Mommy, tell Yu. Yu will bully them back for you. Yun Shishir forced a smile and opened her arms to him. Her voice was hoarse and broken. Yu, give mommy a hug. Yu's heart skipped a beat as he felt a stab of pain. He looked at Yun Shishir's face. The frailty in his eyes could not be concealed. He immediately walked in front of her and allowed her to embrace him in her arms. Yun Shishir gently rested her small face on the little guy's shoulder. With the child's warm and soft body in her arms, her cold heart actually regained some warmth due to this warmth. Yun Tianyu was nestled in her arms. Even though he could not see Yun Shishir's face from his angle, their hearts were connected. He could clearly feel her gloomy mood. He gently caressed her cheek with his small hand and said weakly, Mommy, you're unhappy, and Yu is unhappy, too. You're sad, and Yu is sad, too. Tell Yu, who bullied you. Yu, teach him a lesson for mommy. No one bullied mommy. Yu, you're so dark inside. Mommy just feels a little tired. Yun Shishir hugged him and took a whiff of his body wash scent. She calmed down a little. Yu smells so good. Mommy is so bad. You came back so late and made Yu wait for so long. Stupid mommy, didn't you promise Yu that you won't drink? Yu raised his head and complained. I'm innocent. Mommy didn't drink alcohol tonight and only took a symbolic sip. I'm not drunk at all. As she spoke, she even blew a mouthful of air for him to check. Yu sniffed her lips. Indeed, there was no strong smell of alcohol. Only then did he believe her. "Mommy, you're not allowed to drink in the future. Not even a drop." "I know. Master Yu." She suddenly cupped his face and rubbed her nose against his intimately. "Yu, Mommy will be with you for the rest of my life. Will you despise Mommy when I'm old?" "No, it won't. Mommy will not be old." "Then, if Mommy is old, will you despise me?" "Even if he despises me, it'll only be a little." Yu used the tip of his pinky as an analogy. She looked at him with disdain from the corner of her eyes. "Mommy, you should be satisfied. Even if you are stupid and old, Yu will never leave you. Even if it's just a little, Yu still loves Mommy the most." Yu's cute confession made Yunshushu burst into laughter. "All right. Mommy, go brush your teeth and wash your face. Then, go to bed early. You still have to wake up early tomorrow to work." She obediently laid down her arms and surrendered. "All right. Master Yu. Mommy will work hard to earn money for Master Yu's marriage." Yu's lips twitched harshly. In his heart, however, he thought, who cares about Mommy's marriage money? The dowry he earns for her is much more than that. Chapter 569. The next day, Yunshushu officially joined the cast. Early that morning, news about the opening ceremony quickly swept the headlines. The extravagant cast, top-notch production team, and the ambiguous relationship between the male and female leads became the hottest topic of the day. Several pages published photos of the male and female leads at the opening ceremony. Gu Xing's handsomeness, Yunshushu's purity, and rather good looks attracted enough popularity. The Green Apple had yet to be released, but with the help of the media, it became a hit. At the same time, the final photos of The Green Apple were released on the official Weibo account. Unlike other movies, which had relatively rough final makeup photos, the final makeup photos of The Green Apple could be said to be exquisite. Once it was released, it immediately attracted the attention of fans of the original novel and quickly became the #1 topic on Weibo. The author of the original novel even shared the post with high praise and said that she was looking forward to the movie. At first, Gu Xing's fans almost dominated the comments section of the official Weibo account, criticizing Yunshushu. There was no other reason. Almost every female actress who acted with Gu Xing's would be attacked by Gu Xing's fans. However, the final photos soon attracted the attention of loyal fans of the original novel. Whenever a novel was adapted into a television series or movie, it would attract the criticism of the original novel's fans. A novel was a novel, and readers would always fall into a beautiful fantasy. However, once it was adapted into a television series, if the casting was not good, the lead was not good-looking, the acting was flawed, and the script was not changed well, it would undoubtedly destroy the original novel. Fans of the original novel would naturally not buy it. However, Lin Fengtian's pursuit of a movie was extremely meticulous. When the male lead of the movie was announced to be Gu Xing's, many fans of the original novel expressed their concerns on the forum. In the original novel, Yin Dongyu had almost crossed the screen from a teenager to a young adult. Gu Xing's was already 28 years old, and many fans of the original novel were worried that Gu Xing's would be too old to play the male lead. However, this concern disappeared after Gu Xing's final photos were released. Gu Xing's face was exquisite and there was no doubt about it. What was even more heaven-defying was that even though it had been 10 years since his debut, it was as if he had grown in reverse. His appearance was no different from when he first debuted at the age of 18. The only difference was that the immaturity he had when he first made his debut had faded away. The current him had the demeanor of a heavenly king. After Yunshushu's photo was released, it also attracted countless compliments. The original novel, The Green Apple, was a bestseller and had millions of fans. Many fans were worried that Lin Fengtian would use a newcomer this time. Yin Xiaochuan's characteristics were very difficult to replicate. There were some areas that could be made up for with acting. Yin Xiaochuan, on the other hand, had an aura that ordinary actors didn't have. During the audition period for the female lead of The Green Apple, fans of the original novel had launched a poll, hoping to see which female artist would play the lead role. As a popular starlet, Yang Mi's votes had always been high. However, the fans of the original novel did not buy it. They felt that the voting was too lousy. Yang Mi couldn't portray Yin Shachuan's innocence and innocence. She reeked of rouge and looked old. She didn't have the naivety of a student at all. However, when Yin Shishir's pure and refined final photos were released on the official Weibo account, the fans of the original novel were in an uproar. Acting as himself, this was clearly acting as himself. Chapter 570. Fans of the original novel were spamming the official forum of The Green Apple. Some asked for the name of this newbie actress who was playing the female lead. Some expressed their anticipation for the release of the movie and wanted to support it to the end based on the looks of the two main leads. Some supported Lin Fengtian and praised The Green Apple for being a production team with a conscience. They had put in a lot of effort in the casting and believed that the movie would be beautiful. Some hoped that Lin Fengtian would do his best to recreate every detail of the original novel. On the set, Mu Shi kept scrolling through Weibo. She had previously applied for Yun Shishir's Weibo account, and in just a few days, it had gained 2 million followers. 2 million. Gosh, this is simply a miracle. One must know that gaining 2 million followers in a few days was already a huge achievement for a newbie actress. This meant that Yun Shishir's popularity was increasing day by day. It seemed that everyone was looking forward to seeing her in action. Yun Shishir walked over after her makeup was done. She thought that her assistant was watching an interesting video when she saw her sitting alone in a chair. However, it turned out to be a fan's message on Weibo. "What are you doing?" Yun Shishir whispered into her ear. Mu Shi was startled. When she looked up and saw that it was her, she patted her chest. "Scary. Shishir, you're here." "Wow." Mu Shi stared at her intently. Suddenly, her eyes widened in disbelief. "Gosh. Shishir, you look so beautiful with makeup." Yun Shishir was in her junior high school uniform. She wore a white short-sleeved shirt and a grayish-blue pleated skirt, revealing her fair, long legs. She had applied light nude makeup on her face. It was impossible for a student's makeup to be too thick. She looked like she had no makeup on, but it was actually very thick. The makeup artist put on some light eyeliner for her, outlining the contours of her eyes. Her eyelashes were long and beautiful, her lips were red, her teeth were white, and her cheeks were light pink. The entire makeup was as elegant as crystal, yet it was stunningly beautiful. Yun Shishir was amused by her. "What do you mean? Don't I look good without makeup?" "Yes, yes, yes. But you look even better with makeup." Shishir, I've decided that you'll be the #1 national goddess in my heart from now on." Mu Shi was full of praises for her looks. Yun Shishir was curious to gossip. "Who was your #1 national goddess before?" "Lin Ji." Mu Shi blinked. "Ganoderma lucidum?" The image of the Ganoderma lucidum surfaced in her mind. "Are you following the entertainment industry or not?" "Lin Mu Shi's." "Shishir Lin Lingji." Mu Shi's." Yun Shishir took out her phone. Her expression changed as she stared at the caller ID that kept jumping before she coldly swiped the screen to end the call. "Who's calling?" As she asked this, the phone rang again. "To her Lingji do." "To." Mu Shi was stunned. "Shishir, why aren't you picking up the call?" "I'm not picking it up." Yun Shishir's face suddenly turned cold. The phone continued to ring. After she hung up the call, she decided to blacklist the number. Mu Shi's eyes widened. Usually, this would only happen after a quarrel between a couple, right? Chapter 571. At the Presidential Palace. Mu Yaja was leaning on the sofa as he listened to the busy tone from his phone. He had made 3 consecutive calls, but they were all hung up. He was already fuming inside. When the 4th call was made, it was already unreachable. The 5th call, the 6th call, the robotic female voice informed him that he could not get through at all. Mu Yaja's handsome face stiffened. His gaze fell on the phone screen, and his cold voice showed his displeasure. What's going on? Is the phone broken? Minyu, who was observing his expression, said, cough. Boss, in this case, it's usually because your number has been blacklisted. Blacklisted? What does blacklisting mean? Mu Yaja raised his eyes and asked in a dangerous tone. Minyu glanced at the man's icy face and carefully explained, blacklisting means that the phone has a blacklist function. Once a number is added, it can't be called anymore. As the name suggests, it means that your number has been blacklisted, and you can't be reached. Bang! The crystal goblet on the table fell to the ground and shattered into pieces, causing water to splatter everywhere. Blacklisted? This woman. How dare she? My phone is broken. Give me your phone. Mu Yaja threw the phone on the table with a loud bang. He asked for it from Minyu and quickly dialed a number. Beep. The call actually got through. Mu Yaja's face turned even darker at this point. His face was overcast with gloom. Minyu stood at the side, trembling with fear. He did not even dare to breathe loudly as he was worried about the safety of his phone. After a long ring, the call actually got through. Yunshusher's polite and gentle voice came through. Hello, stupid woman. Why didn't you pick up my call? Mu Yaja bellowed angrily. He believed her this time. She had blacklisted his number. This woman, how dare she blacklist his number? Woman, what do you mean by this? Did you blacklist me? After a moment of silence, Yunshusher's nonchalant and dismissive voice came through the phone. Yes, I've blacklisted you. Minyu's heart skipped a beat. Oh God, Yunshusher was so brave. How dare she provoke the CEO? Sure enough, Mu Yaja's face instantly turned black. He suddenly stood up and kicked the high table. The beautiful and exquisite antique vase on the table fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Woman, give me a reasonable explanation. Mu Yaja said in a low voice. He gripped the phone so hard that it was as if he was going to crush the screen. Explain? Why should I explain it to you? I'm very busy. That's all. After Yunshusher finished speaking, she didn't give him any chance to say anything and hung up the phone. Damn it. Mu Yaja angrily called back again, but the call could not be connected. It was obvious that his number had been blacklisted as well. Mu Yaja's face was dark and his eyes were filled with anger. His number had been blacklisted, so he had nowhere to vent his anger. This feeling was really unpleasant. Asterisk bang. Asterisk he slammed the phone on the ground. He was so scared that he shuddered. Then, he looked at the phone on the ground with heartache. His heart was bleeding. Chapter 572. Get lost. Mu Yaja waved his hand. He channeled all his anger into his fist and punched Minyu's shoulder. The huge force almost dislocated Minyu's shoulder. Minyu immediately held his shoulder and retreated to the side. Even though his shoulder was in great pain, he still did not dare to move. He looked at the angry man in front of him in fear. In his opinion, Mu Yaja rarely got angry. He had always been good at controlling things. It seemed that everything was under his control without exception. However, Yunshusher seemed to be an exception. This woman seemed to be the only person that Mu Yaja could not control. Mu Yaja clenched his fists. His body was filled with a terrifying aura. It was a kind of fierce aura that almost penetrated the bone marrow. It was dark and oppressive, making it hard for people to breathe. Minyu looked at the sharp eyes and suddenly felt a little suffocated and frightened. There was no doubt that this was an extremely terrifying man. It made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Find out where she is. Minyu immediately lowered his head and retreated. He quickly ordered his subordinates to find out where Yunshusher was. Soon, the news came. He immediately reported the exact information to Mu Yaja. Chairman Mu, Miss Yun is filming today. Filming? Yes, director Lin Fengtian's film. The male lead, Gu Xingze, has officially started filming. Minyu said. Mu Yaja frowned and immediately ordered, book a flight back to China. Minyu was shocked and immediately asked, are we going back now? Now, go and book a flight right now. Minyu was a little hesitant. But, Chairman Mu, about the follow-up of the acquisition tomorrow, don't you understand what I'm saying? Mu Yaja turned around and looked up. The anger in his eyes was about to burst out in the next second. Or are you saying that even you want to go against me? Minyu was shocked. He lowered his head and said in a trembling voice, I wouldn't dare. Mu Yaja glared at him fiercely. Book a flight. Now, immediately, right now. Yes. Beijing Affiliated High School. At the end of June, the middle school exams had ended. The film crew had to finish filming the middle school scenes as soon as possible before the summer break. When the crew was filming, they would film all the scenes in one scene in one go. After filming the scenes in one scene, they would continue filming the scenes in another scene. That was because setting up a set required a lot of money and energy, and it was impossible to follow the timeline of the script. Therefore, they had to follow the scenes. The actors kept changing their outfits according to the script and completed their scenes according to the script. The progress of the filming was unexpectedly slow. When it came to filming, Lin Fengtian was very picky and sought perfection. Therefore, whenever an actor's gaze was not on point, he would ask them to do it all over again. She remembered that there was once a school anniversary scene that took 2 whole days to film. This was because Yang Chang, who was standing in the first row, was often distracted. For the past few days, her condition seemed to be a little off. Her eyes were unfocused, and there were a few times when Lin Fengtian used the loudspeaker to scold her. There were a few days in June when the sun was still very hot. It was more than 35 degrees Celsius, and it was extremely stuffy. All the actors and actresses stood under the sun for a long time because of her mistakes. Those A-list actors and actresses still had the right to hide under the shade and relax in places where they could not be seen. Chapter 573. Because of this, many people had complaints, but they did not dare to voice out their anger. Yang Mi was a big shot and was not someone they could afford to offend. She got her hands on a small air conditioner fan from somewhere and blew at Yun Shishir's face with all her might. She, on the other hand, was sweating profusely from the heat. Yun Shishir's face was covered with a thick layer of makeup. Now that they were filming outdoor scenes and the weather was so hot, she would have to wash it off and reapply it if she were to sweat and ruin the makeup on her face. For the few outdoor scenes, her shots were all close-up shots, so there could not be any blemishes on her face. If her foundation were to fall off and her complexion was uneven, the results would not be guaranteed and would have to be res-hot. Hence, she kept fanning herself with the small air conditioner fan in one hand and the fan in the other. Yun Shishir looked up at her and saw that her face was red from the sun. Her heart ached and she pushed the fan to her. Look at you, you're so hot. Don't just blow at me, you might get a heatstroke. She was stunned for a moment and then felt touched. Shishir, I realize that you're very gentle to me. Isn't this how it should be? How many celebrities are gentle to their assistants? She complained. You haven't seen it, many celebrities hit and scold their assistants casually. They'll slap them if there's a disagreement. It's tiring to be an artist's assistant. But Shishir, you're so gentle and treat me so well. That exaggerated? Yun Shishir was speechless. Do you know Yan Bingqing? She lowered her voice and gossiped. Previously, an assistant accidentally guessed her skirt. In a fit of anger, she splashed hot tea on the assistant's face. That was freshly brewed tea, so it was very hot. That poor assistant's face immediately started to blister. Yun Shishir was dumbfounded. That ruthless? What do you think? She grinned. But I'm lucky to be with you. Everyone is envious of me. Pfft, Yun Shishir suddenly laughed. Why? What are you laughing at? She glared at her, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Yun Shishir voiced out her thoughts. Now that you mention it, it sounds like an ancient harem. Celebrities are like concubines while their assistants are like little maids. They scheme against each other and compete with each other. Interesting. She could not help but laugh along when she heard that. Ha ha. That's right. That's how it is in this industry. Yun Shishir's face broke into a smile, but her face turned icy cold all of a sudden. It was so cold that even his shoulders couldn't help but shiver. She turned her head in surprise and saw Gu Xingze standing beside her. He handed her an ice pack that was filled with cold air. Here. Brother Xingze. Have you finished filming your scenes? She asked cheerfully. Gu Xingze used to be Qin Zhou's artist, and Mu Shi used to be his assistant. Hence, she and Gu Xingze were considered close. Gu Xingze nodded, opened a can of ice water, and took a big gulp. He also had makeup on his face and wore sportswear, which was different from his usual image on the screen. At this moment, he was as young as a teenager of 14 or 15 years old. He had fair skin, pure and clear eyes, and a gentle scholarly temperament like jade, but he did not lose his vitality and sunshine. He was stunningly handsome. Mu Shi was mesmerized by his handsome side profile as he drank the water. Her heart thumped wildly. Chapter 574. What's there to be envious of? Yun Shishir mumbled. You can act with Brother Xingze. Aya, a handsome man and a beautiful woman are a perfect match. The scene will definitely be beautiful. Mu Shi's heart clenched in excitement. Yun Shishir, however, smiled and said, all right, stop fooling around. As soon as she said that, the stage supervisor immediately rushed over to greet Yun Shishir. Shishir, you have a scene next. Get ready. Okay, thank you. Yun Shishir nodded. She then tidied up her makeup in the mirror and got up to leave. Mu Shi stayed on the spot, only to see Gu Xingze staring blankly at Yun Shishir's receding figure. There was a momentary daze on his handsome face as his gaze followed Yun Shishir's back view from beginning to end. His absent-mindedness, however, was keenly captured by her assistant. For a moment, she was also a little dazed. To be honest, sometimes, when watching the scenes between the two of them, it was really hard to tell if they were acting or not. Sometimes, no matter how exquisite and meticulous an actor's acting skills were, acting was still acting. If one followed the production team all year round, it was easy to tell if they were acting or not. However, after these few scenes, Mu Shi sometimes had an illusion. She kept feeling that Yun Shishir was acting. Gu Xingze did not seem to be acting, though. This was because she could clearly see the surging emotions in his eyes when he looked at Yun Shishir. Love and love were intertwined. It was really hard to tell if he was acting or if it was real. Every inch of his gaze, every time they looked at each other, was filled with adoration. Even an experienced actor with superb acting skills would not be able to portray such a feeling. When it came to emotions, it was just acting. If it was real, it was real. Therefore, there were several scenes where Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir acted together in one take. Even the nitpicky Lin Fengtian did not find anything wrong with them. Yin Xiachuan dared to love and hate, while Yin Dongyu dared not to express his deep love. This taboo and tangled emotional entanglement was performed perfectly by the two of them. It was simply carefree. Everyone was immersed in the drama. The crew members present were also secretly praising Yun Shishir for her outstanding acting skills and Gu Xingze for his exquisite emotions. Only Mu Shi had a vague feeling that Gu Xingze was not acting. Could it be that he was too engrossed in the role and the fake became real? Was Gu Xingze interested in Yun Shishir? It was late at night. There was only one scene left between the male and female leads. The scene was set in a music classroom. According to the plot, this was the place where the male and female protagonists first collided. In the plot, there was no one in the school. Yin Xiachuan pulled Yin Dongyu into the music classroom under the cover of the night and got him to teach her Chopin's Nocturne. Yin Dongyu taught her step by step. Yin Xiachuan sat beside him and looked up at his side profile in a daze. Suddenly, she leaned forward and kissed the corner of his mouth. Yin Dongyu was startled and the piano music stopped abruptly. Yin Xiaochuan, on the other hand, could not suppress the budding feelings in her heart. She hugged his shoulders and pressed her lips against his. Their first kiss happened in this scene. It was almost one of the climaxes of the movie and was voted as the most anticipated scene by fans of the original novel. Lin Fengtian attached great importance to this scene. Originally, Mu Yazhe had given an ultimatum to forbid Yun Shishir from kissing and hugging scenes. Chapter 575. For the sake of the plot, the kissing scenes were all close-up shots. Every change in their expressions, Yin Dongyu's shock, and Yin Xiaochuan's nervousness, had to be vividly displayed through close-up shots. How could they film a double? Unless they found two people who looked exactly like them. Wouldn't that be too difficult? How could there be two identical leaves in the world? No matter how similar they were, a double was still a double. It was fine for the close-up shots, but it would not be able to fool the audience. Hence, Lin Fengtian took the risk and decided to act first and report later. For the time being, he would hide it from Mu Yazhe and finish filming this scene first. Lin Fengtian's pursuit of acting had become an obsession. The set had already been set up. Yun Shishir sat in front of the piano and gently tapped on the keys. Ding ding dong dong, a melodious sound of the zither flowed from her fingertips. She only played the right hand part and did not add any chords. The beautiful melody, coupled with the quiet night, gave rise to a romantic atmosphere. Gu Xingze stood behind her, sipping his coffee. Looking at her fingering, he suddenly said, "Your fingering isn't very professional." Yun Shishir looked up at him and smiled faintly. "Yes. I learned the piano later on. I didn't practice the basics when I was young, so it's very difficult for me to practice." When she was young, Yun Yeqing had enrolled her in an interest class, but she majored in the violin. When she entered university, she chose to minor in piano. Piano required a strong foundation and fingering, but these required a strong foundation from a young age. Hence, her piano playing could fool the average person, but to the professional Gu Xingze, her standard could only be described as ordinary. Gu Xingze sat down next to her and demonstrated the fingering technique. The fingering technique should be like this. You won't be able to play smoothly with this technique. Oh, he then corrected her hand shape. When you play the piano, it's like holding an egg in your hand, like this, he demonstrated once more. You seem to be very professional. Yun Shishir smiled. Gu Xingze smiled. Yun Shishir, I've been playing the piano for 24 years. Do you think I'm a professional? Wow, amazing. Yun Shishir praised him from the bottom of her heart. You're just like Yin Dongyu in the original novel. You're both the prince of piano. I've always thought that men who play the piano are very elegant. A rare warm smile appeared on Gu Xingze's face. Oh, is that so? The filming had not officially started, but the two of them were already in character. Gu Xingze was carefully teaching her the fingering techniques and the details of the performance. The cameraman at the side saw that this scene was very loving and quickly recorded it. He planned to post it on Weibo as a highlight of the movie. Lin Fengtian read the script while watching this scene. He lamented, "This is the feeling I wanted." He was satisfied with his choice and gratified. Although Yun Shishir was a newbie, there were very few NGs throughout the filming. He did not know if it was because she was comfortable with such a role, or if it was because she was born with the talent of an actress. Even though he was very strict when it came to filming, her spirituality when acting was simply admirable. A newbie like her was talented, elegant, and good-looking. Even the heavens would not tolerate her if she did not become popular. Lin Fengtian walked over with the script and seriously explained the scene to the two of them, including the facial expressions, eye contact, and other details that he required. Chapter 576. All right. Everyone, get ready. The makeup artist immediately stepped forward to touch up their makeup. The script clerk brought the script board over and held it in front of the camera. The Green Apple, Scene 9, Action. Scene 9, Music Classroom. The night was dark and there were no stars in the sky. In the pitch-black music classroom, the window was suddenly pulled open and the curtains were lifted from the outside. The moonlight poured in, bright and beautiful. Een Dong-yu, played by Gu Xingze, leaned against the window and looked around cautiously. Beside him, Yun Shishir quickly got into character. Een Xiaochuan, who was playing the role of Een Xiaochuan, leaned against his side and curled up into a small ball. She carefully tugged at his sleeve and asked, "Brother, are you sure it's okay?" "Yes." The teacher on duty should have returned to the dormitory to rest. "There's no one in the music classroom," Een Dong-yu said in a low voice. Een Dong-yu lowered his voice and gave Een Xiaochuan a look. "Wait for me outside the door, okay?" "Okay, be careful." Een Xiaochuan nodded obediently and a mischievous smile appeared on her face. Een Dong-yu held onto the windowsill and leaped onto the windowsill. He nimbly flipped himself into the classroom. Een Xiaochuan quickly ran to the classroom door. Soon, the door opened from the inside and she saw Een Dong-yu's smug and bright smile. "Brother, you're the best." Een Xiaochuan cheered softly and excitedly as she entered the classroom. "Shoo! Keep your voice down." Een Dong-yu was afraid that her voice would alarm the security guards. He reached out and flicked his finger on her forehead. "Ouch, it hurts." Een Xiaochuan held her forehead and glared at him coquettishly. Een Dong-yu exchanged glances with her. After drawing all the curtains in the music classroom tightly, he turned on a light. The warm light shone down. It landed on a beautiful and elegant Yamaha tripod piano. "Wow! What a beautiful piano!" Een Xiaochuan covered her mouth. Her eyes were filled with amazement. She looked around the piano a few times and a touched smile appeared on her face. All the romantic fantasies she had when she was a girl surfaced on her face. When Een Dong-yu had been practicing the piano since he was a child, she liked to sit by his side and watch him play the boring music over and over again. She really liked that pair of hands that were tapping on the piano keys. Her fingers were long and slender, and her fingertips were like porcelain. She looked extremely beautiful on the black and white piano keys. The sunlight outside the window shone in, reflecting on his handsome side profile. Against the light, it was quiet and beautiful. She wasn't born with a love for the piano. Her obsession with the piano stemmed more from her infatuation with Een Dong-yu. Een Dong-yu watched helplessly as she circled the piano with her hands in her pockets. The corners of her mouth curved into a gentle and doting smile. "Brother, how much does this piano cost?" Een Xiaochuan grinded the piano frame like a believer praying, and asked longingly. "It's very expensive." "How expensive is it?" About 200,000, Een Dong-yu said after some thought. Een Xiaochuan was completely stunned. Her eyes were as big as bells, filled with disbelief. "The sound must be amazing." "Yes. It's a piano specially designed for performance." Lin Fengtian looked at the image on the monitor and gently rubbed his chin. The plot was progressing smoothly, unbelievably smoothly. Chapter 577. Een Dong-yu's cautiousness and vigilance when he entered the music room through the window, Een Xiaochuan's uneasiness and nervousness, and Een Xiaochuan's amazement at the tripod piano when they entered the classroom were all vividly displayed. She completely portrayed the naivety and romance of a 13 or 14-year-old girl. Lin Fengtian sat in front of the camera and held his breath. When the shot ended, he shouted, "Okay." The entire scene was shot without any cuts. Yun Shishir immediately withdrew from her role and walked to Lin Fengtian's side. She walked to the monitor and looked at the last shot. She sized up Lin Fengtian's serious and meticulous expression. Seeing that he was looking at the camera with a solemn expression, she watched the footage again from the beginning. She was a little nervous, afraid that he would not approve of her performance. "Director Lin, shoo." Lin Fengtian stopped her and pointed to her close-up on the camera. Then, he pressed the pause button and said to her, "Look at this close-up." Yun Shishir squatted beside him. Lin Fengtian replayed the tape for her from the beginning again. When it came to this close-up shot of her, Lin Fengtian hit the pause button and turned to look at her. Yun Shishir immediately understood his intention. The gaze is not there yet. Yes. Lin Fengtian felt that her comprehension was good. The gaze is lacking. Yin Xiaochuan's coquettishness towards Yin Dongyu is not fully expressed. The long shot is perfect, but when it comes to the close-up, it's lacking a lot. Yun Shishir filtered the author's description of this scene in her mind and repeatedly pondered over it. I understand, Director Lin. Let's reshoot this scene. Yun Shishir nodded and immediately returned to her seat. Lin Fengtian took a sip of water, but he could not calm down the surprise in his heart. He was especially strict when it came to filming. On the set, he rarely praised anyone. Those who appeared in his movies, from A-list celebrities to unknown extras, were all treated equally. Which one of them had not been scolded harshly by him? On the first day of filming, Yun Shishir was often unable to grasp the position of the camera due to her lack of experience. She had a big problem with her positioning and often walked out of camera range. Because of this, he often lost his temper with her. Regardless of the fact that it was her first time acting and that she was a newbie who lacked experience in positioning, she scolded Yun Shishir bitterly. Many people rejoiced in his misfortune, especially Yan Bingqing and Yang Chang, who were secretly delighted. In the production team, Yun Shishir was ostracized for two reasons. Firstly, it was because she was the newbie that Huan Yu was currently promoting. She was beautiful, young, and talented. Everyone knew that this newbie would definitely become popular. She just lacked an opportunity. And now, this movie was her opportunity. Everyone believed that as long as she was involved in this movie, it would not be a pipe dream for her to become an instant hit. This newbie was definitely going to be popular. Therefore, Yang Chang and Yan Bingqing were eyeing her covetously. He was afraid that after she became famous overnight, Huan Yu would throw resources at her and her status would rise. The competition in the entertainment industry was too strong, and there was a lot of pressure. It was not easy for an artist to make a name for themselves. Yan Bingqing had a sugar daddy behind her. In addition, her team was very supportive of her planning and packaging. Yan Bingqing practically relied on scandals and hype to get to where she was. Chapter 578. However, Yang Mi was different. She was a child star and entered the entertainment industry at a very young age. When she was 5 years old, she acted as a little princess in a palace drama. She was considered a child star with a lot of experience. However, she did not have any talent. Her acting skills were her biggest flaw. Her looks could be improved through plastic surgery. Without any scandals, she could create topics to attract attention. However, she did not have any talent in acting. This was an irreparable weakness. Yun Shishir's talent was much better than hers. Naturally, she was eyeing her. The second reason was that she was a newcomer but had already risen to the top with the role of the female lead. This movie was originally a role that Yan Bingqing and Yang Mi were fighting for. However, Yun Shishir joined the cast out of nowhere. The two who were originally enemies instantly became friends. As the saying goes, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. Therefore, after Lin Fengtian criticized Yun Shishir, the two of them ran to her in groups to ridicule her. However, Yun Shishir was a person who was not shocked by honor or disgrace. She did not take their exclusion to heart. After a night, she carefully pondered the problem of her positioning. On the second day of filming, she had made great progress. There were almost no major problems with her positioning. Even if there were, they were just small flaws. Under Lin Fengtian's guidance, they were quickly fixed. Lin Fengtian was very surprised by this, but he did not praise her in front of everyone. He wanted to praise her, but he could not. He rarely praised someone. If he praised her in front of Yan Bingqing, Yang Mi, and the others, it would definitely attract jealousy. Therefore, no matter how good Yun Shishir's performance was, he did not show it on his face. In fact, he was very satisfied with Yun Shishir's performance. It exceeded his expectations. It was even better than Gu Xing's. Lin Fengtian slapped his thigh. He was so excited when he thought about the upcoming kissing scene. He was looking forward to Yun Shishir's performance. This scene was quickly shot. Then, it was time for the 10th scene. Lin Fengtian excitedly ran to Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir to talk about the scene. There weren't many kissing scenes in the novel. There were only 5 kissing scenes in the movie. In the script, the first kissing scene was between Yin Dongyu and Yin Shechuan. It was in this scene. Yun Shishir was originally prepared for the kissing scene. There were not many descriptions of kissing scenes in the original novel. However, when she heard that Lin Fengtian wanted to do a close-up of the kissing scene, her face immediately turned red. When filming this kissing scene, you must put your heart and soul into it. Yin Shechuan's naivety, nervousness, and thunderous heartbeat, as well as Yin Dongyu's uneasiness and helplessness, must be portrayed well. For some reason, Yun Shishir was lost in thought during Lin Fengtian's explanation. Mu Yaja's seductive voice suddenly rang in her ears. "Kiss me." Mu Yaja was the first man she had ever kissed. Before this, she didn't have any kissing experience. She clearly remembered his graceful stretching posture, his deep eyes landing on her body, and the corners of his lips curling up in an evil and provocative arc. He said to her, "Please me." When he asked her for a kiss, he would always grab her struggling hand and pull her into his arms. He would press her against the wall and seal her lips domineeringly, as if he wanted to steal all of her breath. He would kiss her deeply and interlock his fingers with hers. It was as if he wanted to melt into each other's blood and bones. Chapter 579. It was probably jealousy, as well as flying into rage out of humiliation. "Yun Shishir." Lin Fengtian raised his voice and pulled her back from her thoughts. Yun Shishir immediately snapped out of it and asked, "What's wrong?" "Director Lin. You're distracted." Lin Fengtian looked slightly angry and knocked her head with the script. Yun Shishir stuck out her tongue in shame and said, "I'm sorry, is there anything else you don't understand?" Lin Fengtian asked. Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir looked at each other. Lin Fengtian thought of something and said, "Shishir, when we're filming the kissing scene later, I'll use camera B to get a close-up of you. Be careful when you're in position and don't walk out of the camera." Yun Shishir glanced at the few cameras and then nodded her head. Lin Fengtian returned to his seat in front of the monitor. All departments, in position. The script supervisor immediately stepped forward and announced, "The first scene of The Green Apple, Scene 10, Action." Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir quickly got into character. This scene was very simple. When Yin Dongyu was teaching Yin Shechuan how to play the serenade, Yin Shechuan couldn't control her feelings. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him. The main focus of the scene was the emotional changes during their first kiss. Yin Dongyu's retreat and Yin Shechuan's initiative. The most important scene of The Green Apple was none other than this. Yin Dongyu and Yin Shechuan were biological siblings, but they grew up together and were very close. Yin Shechuan had always been very dependent on Yin Dongyu and saw him as her world. There was a passage in the original novel that went like this: "At the end of the day, blood ties are really a strange thing. It could bind two people together tightly, and it was the most intimate bond. But it can also mercilessly separate them from each other and create an insurmountable gap. When I was young, I used to be glad that I had an elder brother who doted on me. I used to think that I was the happiest girl in the world. When I grew up, I hated the fact that the man I loved so much had the same blood flowing in his body. She had walked all the way, loved all the way, and was wrong all the way. From ignorant feelings, to immature feelings, to a strong desire to be together forever, until they were forcibly separated by the world. How far is forever? In a single thought, eternity was eternal. One wrong thought could lead to death at every step. Brother, do you know that even though the world is big, I have nowhere to go and no one to rely on? Whether it is God or anyone else, who can explain to me what love is? If no one can explain it clearly, then why can't I fall in love with him?" Yin Dongyu was born during the coldest time of winter. Yin Shechuan, on the other hand, was born on the hottest day of summer. The personalities of the two siblings were like winter and summer. Not long after Yin Shechuan was born, the first word she would say was Big Brother. The first name that it recited was also In Dongyu's name. In Dongyu was 5 years older than In Shechuan. When they were young, their parents were busy with work and the family of 4 rarely spent time together. Hence, to In Shechuan, In Dongyu was the person she relied on the most. In Dongyu had delicate features and was very handsome. Therefore, there were many girls who liked him since he was young. Chapter 580. This coldness became more obvious during the rebellious period of his youth. From the beginning to the end, the only person who could freely get close to him was In Shechuan. Perhaps it was because they were blood-related, but In Dongyu doted on In Shechuan to the bone. Even his parents could not compare to this kind of love. The young In Dongyu did not realize that this sibling relationship had already undergone a qualitative change. This relationship had taken a fork in the road from the very beginning. In Shechuan's attachment to him gradually turned into possessiveness. The relationship between the siblings was so good that they even slept on the same bed until junior high school. It was only when In Shechuan entered junior high school that her body started to develop. In Dongyu was already in his first year of high school. After taking biology classes, he gradually realized the difference between men and women. Hence, he gradually distanced himself from In Shechuan. However, unlike In Dongyu, In Shechuan quickly realized that her feelings for In Dongyu had gone beyond the common sense of siblings. She uneasily realized that she and In Dongyu were not destined to be bound together. They would maintain this distance for the rest of their lives. And there was bound to be a third party between them. The thought of this third party unscrupulously occupying his arms, his chest, his love, and his eyes not only for her, his care and protection not only for her, plunged In Shechuan into an unprecedented panic. What made her even more uneasy was that she was extremely repulsed by this possibility. She even felt a deep hatred for this third party who had yet to appear. Once, when she saw In Dongyu returning home with a female classmate, her jealousy exploded. However, she knew in her heart that this feeling was not normal. It was immoral. Even if he was the first boy in her life to dote on her, and the one who doted on her the most. He made her heart beat like thunder and filled her with joy. However, she could not love him. In Shechuan had been trying hard to suppress this feeling. However, it was not until this scene that her love for In Dongyu could no longer be suppressed. That was how the kissing scene came about. In order to participate in the talent show, In Shechuan signed up for piano performance. As for piano performance, she was just an amateur and had not practiced since she was young. When In Dongyu was young and learning the piano, she would sit by his side and practice with him. In Dongyu specially sneaked her into the music classroom and taught her to consolidate her skills overnight. Ding ding dong dong, Chopin's serenade flowed gently from his fingertips. He kept his head down the entire time as he carefully adjusted her hands to the correct technique. In Shechuan's mind wasn't on the piano, but she was staring at his profile, lost in thought. What happened? In Dongyu looked up and saw In Shechuan staring at his side profile gently. He was momentarily stunned. Nothing. Okay, let's continue then. In Dongyu held her hand and guided it to the piano keys. In Shechuan suddenly held his hand tightly and refused to let go. She used so much force that he could clearly feel her trembling fingers. In Dongyu's heart skipped a beat. Her hands were drenched in cold sweat and her knuckles were white. Brother, let's always be together, okay? In Shechuan looked straight at him, hesitated, and suddenly said in a pleading tone. Chapter 581. When In Shechuan saw his silence, it was as if a thorn had pierced her heart. She felt a little suffocated. Brother, I hate it when you're with other girls. Just like we promised when we were young, let's be together, okay? 100 years, a lifetime together. In Shechuan's face was filled with panic and helplessness at her childish pleading words. She was hoping that In Dongyu would hold her gently in his arms like he did when they were young and promise her, okay, we'll be together forever. But In Dongyu did not. He only pried her fingers away one by one with trembling hands. When he looked up, his face was pale and helpless. Be good, stop fooling around, okay? I'm not fooling around. I'm serious. Yin Xiaochuan got closer to him seriously and said anxiously, I want to be with you forever, brother. Brother, haven't we always promised each other? Xiaochuan, we're siblings. One day, I'll have a girl I love. She'll be my wife. The person I'll spend the rest of my life with is that girl, not you. Do you understand? Why? Yin Xiaochuan's face instantly turned pale. When she heard the cruel words coming out of his mouth, her heart felt like it was being stabbed. Her eyes quickly moistened. She clenched her fists tightly. The despair in her eyes almost drowned her. Then what about what you promised me in the past? Was it a lie? You made a promise. Yin Dongyu turned his face away with a complicated expression. He lowered his head and stared straight at the black and white piano keys. I promised you that I'd be with you forever and never leave you. But not in this way, do you understand? There was a moment of dead silence beside him. Yin Dongyu frowned. He turned around and was about to say something when Yin Xiaochuan suddenly came up to him. One of her hands wrapped tightly around his neck, and her small face kept leaning toward him. While he was still in a daze, Yin Xiaochuan had already cupped his face. She gently closed her eyes like she had learned from the shoujo manga and gently pressed her lips against his thin, cold lips. This was Yin Xiaochuan's and Yun Shishir's first on-screen kiss. Similar to Yin Xiaochuan, her kissing skills were also inexperienced. Half of her body was leaning on Gu Xing's body. Through the thin material of their clothes, she could almost clearly feel the warmth of Gu Xing's chest and his warm heartbeat. There was an inexplicable fragrance on his body. It was different from Mu Yaja's perfume. Instead, it was a natural fragrance. The moment she touched his lips, Mu Yaja's angry face suddenly flashed through Yun Shishir's mind. Woman, how dare you betray me? Betrayal? Who was the one who betrayed who? She gently closed her eyes, trying her best to erase that handsome face from her mind. Following the script, she hugged Gu Xing's neck tightly and leaned her body closer to him. Her kiss deepened and deepened. She pressed her lips against his and greedily sucked in his fragrant breath. At this point, Yin Dongyu should be struggling. He should be resisting with all his might, pushing her away forcefully, and breaking this out-of-control situation. However, at that moment, Gu Xingze hesitated. He widened his handsome eyes and could clearly see Yun Shishir's delicate and beautiful face in front of him. She gently closed her eyes. Due to her excessive nervousness, her shoulders were trembling. Chapter 582. Hence, she was so nervous that she was trembling all over. Even her eyelashes were trembling. The tears that welled up in her eyes quickly moistened her lashes and overflowed from the corners of her eyes. A line of clear tears rolled down her cheeks. This was undoubtedly a desperate and helpless kiss. Yun Shishir was completely immersed in her role. Every inch of her facial features, even her eyelashes, were full of dramatic tension. He stared at her with his eyes wide open. Even though he knew that she was acting and was fully immersed in her role, his heart still trembled violently because of this desperate kiss. His heart ached for her, and he felt a sense of reluctance and longing. Based on the character in the movie, he should have rejected and avoided the kiss. However, in his heart, it was difficult for him to push away Yun Shishir's kiss. Gu Xingze couldn't help but reach out his arms, trying to embrace this uneasy and desperate girl in front of him. The assistant director, who was sitting beside the monitor, suddenly stood up with an ugly expression. Gu Xingze was out of control. According to the script, his next move was to push her away violently. Instead of hugging her. He was about to interrupt when Lin Fengtian suddenly tugged at his sleeve and pulled him back to his seat. Director Lin? He lowered his voice, obviously puzzled. Shoo, don't speak. Director Lin was obviously surprised by the unexpected development of the plot. Even though there were some issues with the plot, due to a freak combination of factors, Lin Fengtian was surprised by the superstar's performance. This is the feeling I want. Yin Dongyu also yearned for this kiss. He also loved Yin Xiaochuan, but unlike Yin Xiaochuan, who dared to love and hate, he was rational and would not allow himself to do anything immoral. Hence, when he found out that he had such strange feelings for Yin Shachuan, he immediately cut them off. He even went home with his female companions and kept a distance from Yin Shachuan. But even so, how could he not yearn for this kiss in his heart? It was this kind of contradictory handling that reflected the struggle in Yin Dongyu's heart. The struggle between ethics and feelings. Feelings were uncontrollable, weren't they? This way, the character could be portrayed more realistically and realistically. Zoom in and get a close-up of Yin Dongyu. Lin Fengtian added another camera. Originally, there was only a close-up of Yin Shachuan. It mainly reflected Yin Shachuan's despair and helplessness. Lin Fengtian added Yin Dongyu's camera, hoping to capture every change in his expression. In the camera, Gu Xing's expression suddenly froze. He suddenly realized that this was all an act. His outstretched arms paused in midair. Then, he pushed Yun Shishir away and stood up abruptly. He turned around with a pale face, and his face was filled with disbelief and shock. Yun Shishir was pushed away and fell on the piano. Her elbows pressed on the black and white keys, producing a discordant bass sound that was harsh and heavy. Just like how the two of them were feeling right now. She stood up awkwardly and awkwardly. She laughed dryly and said with trembling lips, "Brother, why did you push me away? Don't you think this is ridiculous?" Gu Xingze wiped his lips absent-mindedly. He could still feel the residual warmth of her lips. How is it ridiculous? How is it ridiculous? Chapter 583. Can't I kiss you? You can't. Gu Xingze was immersed in Yin Dongyu's role. He said in a low voice, flung her hand away and walked to the window. I can't either. Why not? Yin Shachuan stared at his back view with tears in her eyes. I like you and you like me. Isn't that enough? She screamed the last sentence, almost breaking her voice. Lin Fengtian, who was sitting in front of the monitor, was so agitated that he was trembling. It's so exciting, the tension is so strong. Oh my God. This Yun Shishir was really extraordinary. He hadn't misjudged her. On the screen, Yin Dongyu suddenly turned around and grabbed Yin Shachuan's shoulders tightly. His eyes were bloodshot and he said crazily, "You're my sister and I'm your brother. Do you understand? Why can't we? We shouldn't be together. Do you understand? Why can't we be together?" The young and ignorant Yin Shachuan didn't understand. She persisted, "I can't live without my brother. We have the same blood flowing in our bodies. We're siblings. If we're together, it's incest. It's incest. Do you understand?" Yin Dongyu stared straight at her, trying to wake her up. She suddenly laughed miserably. She grabbed his wrist and placed their wrists together. Is this the reason? Yin Shachuan stared at him with tears in her eyes. If this is the reason, then I'll cut it open with a knife and let the blood in my body drain out. Then, will it be enough? Shut up. Are you an idiot? Or are you threatening me? Yin Dongyu covered her lips tightly, his heart thumping in fear at her angry words. Yin Shachuan suddenly broke down and threw herself into his arms. She cried weakly and helplessly, "But I don't want you to be with another girl. My heart will ache, my heart will ache. Brother, I like you. This is something that can't be helped. It would be great if it could be controlled. But there's no way to control it." Yin Dongyu seemed to have lost all his strength. His arms hung limply by his side as he kept muttering, "We shouldn't be together. This can't happen. Brother." Yin Shachuan couldn't stop her tears from flowing down her cheeks and into the corner of her lips. She opened her mouth several times, wanting to say something, but stopped herself. Yin Dongyu's heart ached as he hugged her. His brows were filled with heartache and conflict. There was also a hidden pain in his eyes, but he could not help it. This scene should have ended with this hug. However, Lin Fengtian did not shout, "Okay," or "cut," for a long time. The entire set fell into a dead silence. Without the director's orders, Yun Shishir didn't know how to proceed. Why hadn't Lin Fengtian given any orders when the scene had ended? Gu Xingze raised his head, but he was stunned. Yun Shishir also noticed his absent-mindedness and could not help but feel suspicious. She quietly turned her head and looked at Lin Fengtian, who was sitting in front of the monitor. She saw Lin Fengtian standing up straight, looking somewhat flustered and at a loss. He looked at the door with an ugly expression and his body stiffened. Yun Shishir was confused for a moment. She couldn't help but follow his line of sight and turned slightly to look at the door of the music room. The door was wide open. The night outside the window was dead and dark. Chapter 584. The man was dressed in a black shirt, as if he wanted to blend into the deep night. His entire body was emitting a terrifying and sharp aura. His entire body was covered in a thick dark haze, almost causing everyone present to be unable to breathe. Muyaja, Yun Shishir was stunned. Immediately after, the dark panic almost made her sink into a swamp, almost suffocating her. The man stood at the door with both hands in his trouser pockets, looking sharp. His short black hair was messed up by the night wind, and it covered his eyes. However, it could not hide the murderous intent in his eyes, which seemed to have fallen into an ice cellar. His handsome face was cold and severe, and there was almost no expression on it. But his deep and handsome eyes were sharp, and the murderous look in them was like a cold knife in the cold night, ruthlessly stabbing her body, as if there was a sharp edge on her back. At that moment, Yun Shishir couldn't help but tremble, and she couldn't help but take a few steps back. The man raised his head slightly, raising his arrogant chin, and his thin lips curled into a cold and threatening arc. "Why aren't you continuing?" Yun Shishir's breathing stopped, but she didn't know how long he had been standing there and how much he had seen. But she comforted herself. She was an actress, and this was just acting. Why did she have to feel guilty? Acting shouldn't be taken seriously, right? Moreover, he was the one who betrayed her first, wasn't he? Didn't he also have an ambiguous relationship with Mu Wanru? His good fiancée even ran in front of him to show off her prowess. But at this moment, what was he? Was he angry? She wasn't angry yet. Shouldn't he be the one who should reflect on himself? Why was he looking at her like that, as if she had done something wrong? But even if she thought so, under the man's cold gaze, these seemingly righteous reasons were no longer valid. It was as if in the end, she was the one who had committed the most heinous crime. Her whole body stiffened, as if there was endless cold air rising from the soles of her feet. It was very exciting. "Why, are you not acting anymore?" His voice was as cold as ice. It almost froze the atmosphere in the room to below zero. Everyone on the set couldn't help but shiver as their shoulders trembled in fear. Lin Fengtian, in particular, looked even worse. How did he appear here? According to the information he had gathered, he had an important acquisition and was flying directly to London, England, and would only be back in a few days. Muyaja stepped into the silent night and slowly walked in. He stepped forward and she stepped back. He closed in step by step, and she retreated step by step. Muyaja's face was as cold as ice. It was frighteningly unfamiliar. Seeing that she was trying to hide behind Gu Xingze, he was so angry that he laughed. His black eyes flashed with blood-red laughter. "Come here." Although his voice sounded casual, every word he said was filled with a chilling intent. He ordered her to go over, but Yun Shishir's feet seemed to be frozen by the cold air, as if they had taken root. She did not move for a long time. Her neglect made the displeasure and anger in his heart boil to the extreme. "Come here, this is the second time." Muyaja glared at her fiercely. If looks could kill, she wouldn't be regretful even if she died 10,000 times. Good, this woman, she was really good. He had only been in England for a few days, but she had blocked his number. He thought that something had happened and hurriedly booked a ticket to return home. But what about her? Chapter 585. Lin Fengtian was frightened and was thinking about how to put out the fire. First, he had to put out Muyaja's anger. Seeing that Muyaja had lost control of his anger and was approaching Yun Shishir, Lin Fengtian was frightened. Yun Shishir was so shocked that she retreated, her hands and feet cold. Gu Xingze saw Mu Yaja's murderous aura and immediately pulled Yun Shishir behind him to protect her. He watched Mu Yaja's every move cautiously. Lin Fengtian had a bad feeling. He rubbed his hands nervously and quickly stood in front of him before the situation got out of control. Chairman Mu. Mu Yaja's footsteps paused for a moment as he lowered his head to give him a sidelong glance. Chairman Mu, don't take it seriously. This kissing scene is all fake. Before Lin Fengtian could finish his words, Mu Yaja suddenly reached out and grabbed his collar, pulling him in front of him. Do you think I'm a child? Fake? Who are you kidding? His eyes were dark and his pupils constricted. Didn't I tell you that all kissing scenes are forbidden? Did you take my words for granted? Lin Fengtian swung his arm violently, and under the huge inertia, Lin Fengtian fell heavily to the ground, making a loud thud. The assistant director and a few of the crew members were shocked. They ran to Lin Fengtian's side and helped him up. Yun Shishir was shocked. Director Lin, she wanted to rush over to see if he had fallen badly, but Gu Xingze pulled her arm behind him. Yun Shishir was angry and glared at Mu Yaja. The latter sneered, you still have the mood to care about others? Very good. Good, it was really a good scene. He had warned Lin Fengtian not to let Yun Shishir have any physical contact with any male actor. However, as his subordinate, Lin Fengtian actually disobeyed his orders. And what about his woman? What did he do when he was not in the country? Being intimate and loving with other male actors? Today, he had bumped into him. What about the other times? What did she do behind his back? Mu Yaja's icy gaze slowly landed on Gu Xingze's hand that was tightly gripping Yun Shishir's arm. The corners of his mouth curled into a sinister arc. Yun Shishir glanced at Lin Fengtian, whose face was filled with pain. Fear, panic, and self-blame attacked her at the same time. It almost gave people the illusion of suffocation. It was unavoidable. She had a clear conscience. Kissing scenes were just a normal part of filming. Everything she did was according to the script. Other than that, she maintained a perfect distance from Gu Xingze. She should have had a clear conscience. Yun Shishir gritted her teeth and said angrily, Mu Yaja, what are you doing? What's the point of venting your anger on others? Mu Yaja's pupils constricted, revealing a cold glint. You also know that I'm very angry now? Yun Shishir glared at him, her breathing rapid. He said again, come over here. I'll give you 3 seconds. So be it. She didn't do anything wrong, did she? She sucked in a deep breath of cold air and took a small step forward. However, she was stopped by Gu Xingze. Shishir, don't go over there. Gu Xingze, on the other hand, was not afraid of Mu Yaja. He lifted his chin and met his cold gaze. Mu Yaja, so this is how you force Shishir? Shishir? Mu Yaja's lips curled up coldly. How affectionate. Gu Xingze, you're really persistent. Mu Yaja retorted. The two of them stood facing each other. Ice and Fire. Chapter 586. The invisible collision of auras spread to every corner of the set. It was as if countless sharp blades were colliding in midair. Mu Yaja's cold gaze fell on the hand that was holding Yun Shishir tightly. He said in a cold voice, take your hand away from her. Gu Xingze met his gaze expressionlessly. He was not afraid of his threat at all. Instead, he held Yun Shishir's hand even more tightly and intertwined his fingers with hers. Yun Shishir looked at Mu Yaja's increasingly cold face. She struggled slightly and wanted to break free from his grip. Gu Xingze held her tightly and turned his head. He said softly, I'm here. Don't be afraid. His consolation did not calm her down at all. Undoubtedly, his protection would only anger Mu Yaja even more. She did not want to anger this man, let alone hurt the innocent. Lin Fengtian stood up with his hands on his shoulders and looked at the smoke-filled battle. He glanced at the angry Mu Yaja and saw that his muscles were tense. He suddenly understood. Could it be that Yun Shishir was his woman? So, He banned Yun Shishir from filming any kissing scenes in the set, and even from having intimate contact with anyone of the opposite sex. Was it because of his possessiveness towards this woman? Then, what was going on with Gu Xingze? Why was he at odds with Mu Yaja? What was he thinking? Lin Fengtian suddenly felt a headache coming on. The situation that had gone out of control was definitely not what he had expected. Let go of her. Mu Yaja gave an ultimatum. Obviously, his anger had reached its limit. This Gu Xingze, who did he think he was? How dare he fight with him? Yun Shishir's body trembled from the immense fear she felt. Gu Xingze sensed her trembling fingertips and felt the cold temperature of her hand. He held it tightly and did not let go. Instead, he protected her behind him even more. Very good. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a bloodthirsty smile as he strode towards them. Lin Fengtian saw that things were about to get out of hand. He was afraid that things would get out of hand. He immediately gritted his teeth and tried to stop Mu Yaja. Mu Yaja did not even bother to look at him. In his fury, he kicked him to the side without even looking at him. Lin Fengtian hit the prop box and felt dizzy. Yun Shishir's face instantly turned pale. Just as she was about to stop him, she saw Mu Yaja walk towards Gu Xingze. Mu Yaja, don't. Yun Shishir screamed, but Gu Xingze quickly pushed her aside. She lost her balance and hit the wall. When she came back to her senses, she saw that Mu Yaja had already grabbed Gu Xingze's collar with a murderous look and was swinging a fist towards his face. As Gu Xingze was distracted, he was caught off guard and received a solid punch. His entire face was turned to the side, and a bloody gash appeared at the corner of his lips, from which a trickle of blood seeped out. Yun Shishir was scared out of her wits. She wanted to go forward and stop him, but she was pulled aside by the field reporter behind her. Shishir, don't go over. It's too dangerous. The two men fought because they were angry and did not know how to control their strength. If he accidentally hurt her, her bones would probably be shattered with a single punch. Gu Xingze slowly straightened his body. He touched his lips with his long fingers and the tip of his tongue tasted blood. There was no doubt that Mu Yaja's punch was not to be trifled with. Chapter 587. After receiving 10 years of special training, his punches and kicks did not have any special moves, but they contained a terrifying amount of power, and every move was fatal. However, Gu Xingze was not a simple character. Although he often played the role of a gentle and elegant person on the screen, he had the blood of the Gu family, the #1 mafia family in the capital, behind him. Naturally, he also had some skills. Gu Xingze looked up coldly, and his face was immediately covered with a layer of coldness. He unbuttoned his shirt with one hand, and at the speed of lightning, he raised his leg in the air and sent a powerful flying kick towards Mu Yaja's face. Mu Yaja dodged nimbly and grabbed the long leg that was flying towards him. However, he could not help but take a step back because of the huge impact. Gu Xingze took advantage of the momentum to move forward and hit him in the face with a powerful uppercut. Yun Shishir was stunned, and she looked at the shocking scene with a conflicted expression. She had never seen such a terrifying scene before. The two men of similar strength were entangled in a fight. There weren't any fancy moves, but every punch was swift and fierce, like lightning, and every move was fatal. The props at the scene were unfortunately destroyed during the fight, and they broke into pieces. Fast, too fast. Gu Xingze threw a punch, and Mu Yaja caught it steadily. His gaze sharpened, and he used his right hand like a knife, and slashed at Gu Xingze's elbow. There was a groan, but Gu Xingze was not to be outdone. He opened his fist and drew his bow, and began to counterattack. The two men were extremely fast, and they separated as soon as they met. The sound of fists and feet colliding was endless, and in the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged more than 10 moves. Fast as lightning. Everyone was stunned, and for a moment, they were all stunned on the spot. No one could see how the two men attacked, and how they counterattacked. However, they could almost see Gu Xingze's expression becoming more and more powerless. Bang! Mu Yaja threw a flying kick at Gu Xingze's abdomen. Gu Xingze dodged nimbly and kicked the camera frame. The steel frame broke. The camera fell to the ground with a cracking sound. Yun Shishir watched with trepidation. She could not imagine that if Gu Xingze had not dodged that attack, his ribs would have been broken. Stop fighting. Gu Xingze, Mu Yaja, stop fighting. She rubbed her hair as if she was about to break down. She anxiously looked at the two people who were entangled together. She was so nervous that she was about to cry. Lin Fengtian and the others were already dumbfounded. Mu Yaja's punches and kicks were extremely fast and ruthless. In the blink of an eye, Gu Xingze seemed to be at a disadvantage. The scene caused everyone's heart to palpitate. At this moment, the huge music classroom was in a mess. There was no doubt in the slightest that in the end, both sides would suffer great losses. This was not what she wanted, this was definitely not what she wanted to see. She could not just stand by and watch, or else something would really happen. At this moment, Mu Yaja suddenly threw a roundhouse kick at Gu Xingze's abdomen, and the latter crashed heavily onto the blackboard. Just as Mu Yaja clenched his fist and swung it at Gu Xingze's nose, in a flash, Yun Shishir desperately rushed forward and threw herself in front of Gu Xingze. She hugged his shoulders tightly and screamed, "Stop fighting." Her voice almost pierced the eardrums. Chapter 588. He gritted his teeth, but it was too late for him to retract his fist. Mu Yaja's strength shifted. His fist was close to Gu Xingze's ear as it landed heavily on the blackboard. Crack, a hole appeared on the blackboard. There was a moment of dead silence. Gu Xingze opened his eyes, and he was already covered in cold sweat. His gaze fell on Mu Yaja's fist. The wooden splinters on the blackboard had pierced his hand until it was a bloody mess. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, threw herself into his embrace and blocked his front with her eyes tightly shut. He grabbed her shoulders like a madman and roared, "Shishir, are you crazy?" Mu Yaja retracted his fist with a murderous look on his face. Drops of blood slid down from his fingertips and dripped onto the ground, dyeing it red. This was the scene that greeted his eyes. His heart felt as if it had been stabbed by a sharp sword. This woman had rushed forward without a care for her own safety and stood in front of another man. What was the meaning of this? It was blinding, really blinding. For a moment, Mu Yaja wanted nothing more than to kill Gu Xingze. He ignored the injury on his hand and pulled Yun Shishir out of Gu Xingze's arms, forcing her to turn around. He gritted his teeth and roared, "Woman, do you want to die?" The man's angry roar almost made her ears tremble. Mu Yaja's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at her. Was she going to block his punch for Gu Xingze? Did she not know that she was going to die? Yun Shishir opened her eyes and looked at the angry man in front of her in horror. He was hysterical, and his eyes seemed like they were about to spew out and swallow her whole. She was suddenly really afraid. She was afraid of this man from the bottom of her heart. "Stop fighting, okay?" Yun Shishir shouted at the top of her lungs to protect Gu Xingze. She immediately lowered her stance and said, "Don't hurt him anymore." "Don't hurt him anymore?" Mu Yaja clenched his fists tightly, the anger in his eyes almost burning her. Gu Xingze was not the one who was injured. He was also injured. Did she not see it? But why did she insist on protecting Gu Xingze? She only had eyes for other men? Mu Yaja was so jealous that he almost lost control. Seeing that she was shielding Gu Xingze with her hands, Mu Yaja warned, "Don't touch him." Yun Shishir froze and subconsciously retracted her hand. "Yun Shishir, I'm warning you. If you dare to lay a finger on him again, I'll make sure he dies a horrible death." His threat left no room for negotiation. There was no doubt that he would really kill Gu Xingze. Yun Shishir obediently stopped touching Gu Xingze. There was no doubt that if she touched Gu Xingze's finger, Mu Yaja would immediately break Gu Xingze's finger. "Don't be angry." Mu Yaja grabbed her chin, his eyes full of anger. "Don't be angry? Don't you think it's too late for you to say this now?" Gu Xingze straightened his arm in pain and said angrily, "Mu Yaja, I won't let you touch her. Get lost." Mu Yaja kicked his abdomen. Gu Xingze groaned in pain and fell to the ground weakly. Yun Shusher's heart skipped a beat, but she did not dare to utter another word. Mu Yaja pulled Yun Shusher into his arms and looked at Gu Xingze coldly. His thin lips twisted cruelly. Gu Xingze, do you think you can compete with me? You're still too inexperienced. Chapter 589. Gu Xingze refused to submit to him and forced himself to stand up. Mu Yaja's eyes turned cold and he kicked him again, causing him to fall to the ground. You want to kidnap my woman while I'm overseas? Gu Xingze, you're really something. Mu Yaja cruelly crushed his abdomen. His eyes were bloodthirsty and murderous. Gu Xingze sneered. What right do you have to say that she's your woman? What right do I have? Mu Yaja suddenly lowered his head and looked at Yun Shusher. He grabbed her chin and said in a charming and bewitching voice, Tell him, whose woman are you, Yun Shusher's red lips trembled. Her eyes fell on Mu Yaja's face in shock. She suddenly felt that this man was so unfamiliar that it was scary. Her every second of hesitation was undoubtedly angering him. Tell him. He tightened his grip on her shoulder so hard that it hurt her. Gu Xingze looked at Yun Shusher, who was so frightened that she did not dare to move. His heart ached and he shouted crazily, Mu Yaja, you have no right to touch her. Let go. Let go of her. What right do you have to force her? Shut up. Mu Yaja grabbed his collar and sneered, right? He leaned close to Gu Xingze's ear expressionlessly and said in a cold voice, I'm her only man. Is this enough? Gu Xingze's face turned pale instantly. Shameless, you overestimate yourself. Mu Yaja suddenly let go of him. Yun Shusher looked at the blood at the corner of Gu Xingze's lips and the bruises on his arms. It was a shocking sight. She suddenly hugged Mu Yaja's waist tightly and said with trembling lips, Mu Yaja lowered his head and stared at her. Her consciousness suddenly dissipated, and her eyes lost focus as she collapsed. I'm your woman, isn't that enough? Is that enough? Don't be angry. I'll listen to you. Is that okay? If there's anything, just come at her. Don't hurt anyone else. It was all her fault. Don't hurt anyone anymore. She was scared. Gu Xingze stared at her pale face. He was so distressed that he could not speak. Shusher, enough, don't say any more. She bit her lip and looked at him. Please, don't say any more, she cried out. Don't beg him. Mu Yaja grabbed her wrist tightly. Yun Shusher gritted her teeth in pain, almost suffocating. Gu Xingze looked at her forbearing expression, but the pain in his body intensified. Mu Yaja pulled Yun Shusher into his arms and turned around to leave with her in his arms. Lin Fengtian looked at the man's back view as he left. His heart was in a mess for Yun Shusher. Just as he was about to go forward, he saw Gu Xingze struggling to stand up and catch up with them. He slapped his thigh and chased after them. At the entrance, rows of black cars were parked at the intersection. Yun Shusher's injuries were almost carried by him all the way to the sports car at the front. His steps were extremely fast, and his long legs were wide. She let him hug her pathetically and did not dare to struggle at all. She could clearly feel the anger that he was constantly suppressing. His eyes were bloodshot, and his handsome face was as tense as ice. This man was obviously very, very angry now. She did not even know what kind of fate awaited her next. Mu Yaja. The man stopped in his tracks, but he did not turn around. He only turned his face slightly and looked at her coldly. Chapter 590. Mu Yaja turned around slowly. Gu Xingze stood at the door, but he did not come over. Fair competition? Mu Yaja smiled sinisterly. You? Gu Xingze looked at Yun Shusher, who was in his arms but had given up struggling. His heart ached. If you're just toying with her, please let her go. I don't believe that you can protect her and not let her be bullied. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a cold smirk as he ignored him. He carried Yun Shusher, who had lost all strength to struggle in his arms, to the sports car, opened the door to the front passenger seat, and pushed her in. Yunshushu slumped weakly in her seat with her head bowed low. She bit her lower lip so hard that it almost tore through. Muyaja fastened her seatbelt and returned to the driver's seat expressionlessly. He stepped on the accelerator and the sports car roared as it sped away. Gu Xing's breathing quickened as he watched the car disappear into the distance. His body went limp and he fell to his knees. How hateful. If he had not given up the position of the head of the Gu family, he would have had the ability to compete with him now. How could he lose to this man? Muyaja. Damn it. Lin Fengtian, who had just arrived, was shocked. He immediately ordered, "Someone, call a car." Xingza, are you okay? The convertible sports car sped along. Along the way, it ran more than 10 red lights and did not stop. The car sped out of the city and onto the winding mountain road in the suburbs. Muyaja stepped on the accelerator and held the steering wheel tightly. He drifted around the corner and the car was going too fast. Yunshushu's breathing stiffened as she looked at the rapidly rising tachometer. Her heartbeat quickened. No matter how hard she tried to suppress it, she almost screamed when he accelerated around the corners. She could even see the sparks from the friction between the car and the fence from the rearview mirror. If there was even the slightest deviation, there was no doubt that the car would crash through the guardrail and fall down the mountain. The man was on the verge of losing control of his emotions. Muyaja, are you crazy? Her screams quickly drifted away in the wind. Shut up. Muyaja stared straight ahead, his entire being emitting a cold aura. That taut handsome face, those deep and cold eyes, constantly reminded her just how angry he was at this moment. The wind was howling on the mountain road. Due to the speed of the car, the wind was so strong that it hurt her cheeks as if they were being cut by a knife. The wind kept flowing into her nose, as if someone was ruthlessly choking her. It was almost suffocating. The speed of the car was so fast that the cliffs that flashed past outside the car were dazzling. Looking from afar, the neon lights of the mortal world were still thousands of miles away. The speed limit sign flashed in front of his eyes and was quickly left far behind. Below the guardrail was a cliff with no end in sight. If the car fell from here, it would definitely be smashed into smithereens. Is he crazy? Yunshushu turned her head and looked at him in panic. She was almost scared out of her wits by the terrifying speed of the car. 180 kilometers, 190 kilometers, gosh, they were on a mountain road. The 30 speed limit sign kept reminding her of how dangerous the situation was. That's enough. Are you crazy? If this goes on, something will happen. Chapter 591. Muyaja did not even look at her as he looked straight ahead. At a bend, he suddenly turned the steering wheel and pulled the handbrake. The thick tires created a huge friction with the ground, causing smoke to rise. Due to the intense friction, the smell of burnt rubber filled her nostrils. Cough. Cough, cough. She looked at the rearview mirror and saw the whites of the eyes floating behind the car. Her heart trembled with fear as she thought that the car was going to catch fire. Stop, stop. Are you worried about me? Muyaja asked her persistently. He did not stop there. Instead, he stepped on the accelerator even more unscrupulously and increased the speed of the car by another gear. It was so fast that her ears were about to go deaf. Stop. I beg you. Yunshushu's body stiffened as she broke out in cold sweat. After a few drifts, her face was even paler than before. She clutched the seatbelt tightly and shut her eyes tightly. She did not dare to open them at all. Tell me, are you worried about me? Muyaja's face was tense as he forced her to answer him. The next drift made a loud and ear-piercing sound of friction. The car drove straight to the end of the cliff and was about to crash down the cliff. I'm worried about you. Enough. Stop. Yunshushu screamed at the top of her lungs. Muyaja stepped on the brakes expressionlessly. The car crashed into the fence and came to a stop in time with a sudden brake. The sports car swayed heavily. Yunshushu opened her eyes in fear, but all she saw was a mountain scenery in front of her. From the corner of her eyes, she saw that the car was almost lying at the end of the cliff. Half of the front of the car was almost hanging above the cliff. If she looked down, she would be in the air. If she had not braked in time, the sports car would have crashed into the fence and crashed down. What was this? Was he trying to scare her? Was he trying to scare her by speeding so crazily? Yunshushu covered her face with her pale white face. Her breathing was rapid and she was on the verge of breaking down. Muyaja. I hate you. She covered her eyes with her hands and tried her best to suppress her emotions. She did not want to reveal her most vulnerable side to this man. Muyaja unbuckled his seatbelt and pulled her in front of him. He fiercely ordered, I order you to take back your words. Yunshushu's eyes widened in shock as she stared at him in disbelief. Sometimes, this man's heartlessness was chilling. Yunshushu, I advise you not to try to anger me. Muyaja looked down at her terrified face and said coldly, take back what you just said. All right. I'll take it back. Yunshushu's voice was hoarse as she sobbed. His cold gaze suddenly landed on her delicate pink lips, and his eyes narrowed dangerously. The kissing scene just now seemed to appear in front of his eyes. That scene was like a needle stabbing into his heart, causing him to be filled with rage that he had nowhere to vent. Yunshushu swallowed hard and carefully moved away. Muyaja, however, reached out and pulled her into his embrace. Lifting her chin with his hand, he stared coldly at her face as his slender fingers rubbed against her lips repeatedly. It seemed like he was using force to wipe away some marks on it. It was so strong that Yunshushu's lips turned pale. He kissed here? Yunshushu was stunned. Her pink lips trembled as she slowly nodded her head. He rubbed his fingertips hard, trying to wipe away any breath that Gu Xingze had left on her lips. It seemed like it wasn't thorough enough. Chapter 592. He suddenly lowered his head and covered her lips with his thin lips. His tongue traced the outline of her lips as he seriously and carefully licked her lips. Then, he bit down hard and pressed his lips against hers. Why? You seem to like him a lot. Yunshushu shook her head hurriedly. She had never had any thoughts about Gu Xingze. Muyaja sneered sinisterly and bit down hard on the corner of her lips. Yunshushu was in so much pain that she wanted to dodge backward, but he pressed her down with his arm and pressed her even closer to him. Then don't let him touch you. His lips were gloomy and there was a strong sense of gloominess. Yunshushu's eyelashes fluttered, but she saw that the man's eyes were suddenly filled with coldness. Remember, you're my woman, so I don't like my woman being touched by anyone. Even if it's work, I won't allow it. Yunshushu's voice trembled as she said, I know, I won't do it again. There won't be a next time. He warned her again, but there was no room for negotiation. Muyaja turned around and suddenly reversed the car to a safe zone. The moment the car landed safely, Yunshushu's tensed heart seemed to have landed on the ground. When they returned to the flat ground, Yunshushu quickly unbuckled her seatbelt and pushed open the door to get out of the car. Her legs gave way and she fell to the ground, clutching her chest. She had been speeding all the way, and it was as if her internal organs had been turned upside down. It was extremely uncomfortable. She patted her chest hard and felt like vomiting. However, when she reached her throat, she felt a surge of acid. At the same time that her heart ached, tears flowed out of her eyes. She was in an extremely sorry state. Muyaja slowly pushed open the door and got out of the car. He turned around and looked at her. Walk over. When Yunshushu heard the footsteps behind her, she jumped up from the ground in shock. She looked at him warily and kept retreating. The cold wind of the mountain range was extremely cold. Her beautiful hair fluttered in the wind. Muyaja stood in front of her. His tall figure was like a wallpaper, and his black shirt almost blended into the darkness of the night. The lights of the sports car were dazzling. Against the light, the moonlight cast a deep shadow on the man's deep silhouette. Only that pair of cold eyes looked at her through the messy hair on his forehead. Even though it was already June, the wind on the mountain was biting cold at night. However, no matter how bone-piercing it was, it could not compare to a 10,000th of his gaze. The winding mountain road was now closed, and no one was going up the mountain. This was the world that he ruled. Muyaja walked in front of her, bent down slightly, and reached out to grab her wrist. But because of the fear in her subconscious, the moment his cold fingertips touched her skin, Yunshishir abruptly avoided his actions and waved his hand away. "Pa!" She slapped his hand aside. It was as if her submission to him was just a delaying tactic. Yunshishir kept retreating. She looked at the man's handsome face that was gradually turning cold and gloomy. When she thought of his bad behavior and recalled the arrogant words that Muwanra had said to her, her heart was pierced fiercely. At the same time, she also had a deep hatred for him. Muyaja's face instantly turned cold. "What? Don't touch me." Yunshishir kept keeping a distance from him, but in her heart, she was determined to draw a line with this man from now on. As if he did not understand her words, Muyaja's lips stiffened and he closed in on her. "Don't come over." Chapter 593. Muyaja's eyes flashed with malice, and his face turned extremely ugly. "Say that again?" he said, but it was a warning in disguise. He was warning her not to try to provoke him again. Yunshishir slowly leaned her back against the guardrail. With a creaking sound, the guardrail made an ear-piercing sound of disrepair. She stared at Muyaja's every move with extreme vigilance and said coldly, "I don't want you to touch me. I'm pregnant with Muyaja's flesh and blood. Previously, he had an ambiguous relationship with you because he thought that I couldn't give birth to a child for him and felt that you were different from other women. He was just toying with you. Now that I'm pregnant, do you think you can still shake my position? You still want to be promoted? It's undoubtedly a pipe dream. If he really has any feelings for you, then why didn't he break off the engagement with me? Why did he sleep with me while having an ambiguous relationship with you and make me pregnant with his flesh and blood? I'm the legal wife, and you're just a mistress that everyone wants to beat up. You can't see the light of day." Yunshishir clenched her fists tightly, and her eyes were like dead ashes. Muyaja suddenly glared at her, his handsome eyes scarlet, and his voice was as cold as ice. "You don't want me to touch you? Yunshishir, I'll give you a chance. Take back those words and walk in front of me." Looking at her constantly retreating footsteps, his heart became more and more furious. "If you don't want me to touch you, then who do you want to touch you? Gu Xingzi. What does this have to do with Gu Xingzi?" Yunshishir felt that he was a little unreasonable. "You still dare to mention him?" Muyaja heard her mention his name, and his anger was uncontrollable. He thought about how he had booked a plane ticket to fly back overnight and rushed to the set to see the two of them hugging and kissing. Even if he knew that it was just an act, he was still hopelessly jealous. Yunshishir widened her eyes in disbelief. She felt that this man was really inexplicable. He was the one who implicated Gu Xingzi first. Muyaja's eyes were bloodshot as he gritted his teeth and said, "If you keep talking about him, believe it or not, I will tear him apart and make him disappear." Yunshishir said angrily, "How dare you?" Muyaja gloomily glared at her. Seeing that she still dared to protect this man, his eyes were so red that it looked like blood was about to drip out. "Do you think I wouldn't dare?" The fury in his eyes frightened her. Yunshishir looked at his bleeding fist. Just now, he had punched through the blackboard and was badly mutilated by the wooden thorns. However, at this moment, he seemed to be unaware of the pain from his wound and only stared at her coldly. He was like a wild beast looking for food, and his entire body was filled with the aura of a tiger eyeing its prey. She couldn't help but take a step back, but she heard a painful groan coming from the guardrail behind her. The guardrail on the mountain road had been attacked by heavy rain a while ago, and it had been exposed to the scorching sun for a long time. It had been in disrepair for a long time, and when she moved a little too far, she could hear the guardrail breaking from the depths. Yunshishir was in a huge panic and didn't notice it. However, Muyaja sensed the danger behind her and a trace of fear flashed in the depths of his handsome eyes. He shouted, "Stupid woman, are you looking for death? Come here." Yunshishir was frightened by his angry voice and her body trembled again. The gravel under her feet rolled down the mountain because of her actions. Crackle. Shit. Chapter 594. Yunshushu suddenly realized the danger she was in. She turned her eyes slightly and saw an endless cliff. The guardrail she was leaning on kept making cracking sounds as if it was on the verge of collapsing. Her heart skipped a beat at once. Humans were instinctively afraid of heights, and her legs couldn't help but feel weak. Muyaja stared at her movements, afraid that she would fall down the cliff with the broken guardrail if she was careless. At that moment, he felt a chill in his heart. He had been driving on the mountain road. No matter how fast the car was, he was confident in his driving skills. But now, he felt panic in his heart. It was a panic that he had never felt before. A chill ran down his spine. He stared at her nervously and reached out to her. "Come here. Don't move back anymore." If she fell, she would really be smashed to pieces. Yunshushu immediately said, "Don't come over. I won't go over unless you calm down first." Muyaja stared at her and said in a cold voice, "Stupid woman, are you threatening me?" "I'm not threatening you. Look at you now. I'm afraid that I'll be crushed by you before I fall off the cliff." Muyaja gritted his teeth and said, "If I could, I'd crush you right now." Yunshushu trembled and sneered, "Then I'd rather jump down than be crushed to death by you." "You dare?" Muyaja roared. Yunshushu bit her lips. "Do you think I don't dare?" Muyaja clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles creaked eerily. It was as if he was trying to restrain himself. "All right. I'll calm down." Even if he knew that this woman was threatening him. Yunshushu looked at the redness in his eyes and suddenly bit her lips. In the end, she forced herself to calm down and said calmly, "Muyaja, promise me something." "What's the condition?" Muyaja asked, but his eyes were fixed on her feet. He was prepared for the moment she was in danger of falling off the cliff and was silently calculating the distance between him and her. "Let's not be in contact anymore." Yunshushu gritted her teeth and tried to suppress the sourness and pain in her heart. "Let me go." "Let you go?" Muyaja held his breath and then his eyes turned cold. "What do you mean?" "You give me freedom, and I'll give you freedom. We won't interfere with each other. Isn't that good?" Yunshushu smiled bitterly. "Let me go." His possessiveness, dominance were almost suffocating, and he could not give her a sense of security. Perhaps relationships were tiring to begin with. She didn't want to bear it anymore. Muyaja stared at her without blinking. "Reason? There's no reason. I just hate you," Yunshushu said calmly. "I hate your dominance, I hate your arrogance, and I hate your self-assertion even more. My life has never been peaceful since I met you. Isn't that reason enough?" Muyaja stared at her. The emotions in his eyes changed rapidly, but they were unfathomable. Suddenly, 3 words were forced out from between his lips. "I agree." Chapter 595. Yunshushu slowly straightened her body and walked towards Muyaja. However, when she was halfway there, she saw Muyaja suddenly rushing towards her. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his embrace. It was a terrifying force. Yunshushu could see the uncharacteristic panic on his tense and handsome face. Was he worried about her? Was he afraid that she would really fall off the cliff? There was no time for her to react. Under the huge inertia, the two of them fell onto the hood of the sports car. Yunshushu groaned in pain. When she opened her eyes, Muyaja flipped her over and pinned her under his body. His tall figure almost blocked out the moonlight. A handsome face that was filled with anger came into view. Now that she had fallen into his hands again, the anger that he had been suppressing suddenly exploded without restraint. Muyaja angrily grabbed her chin and buried his face in her neck. He bit her and wanted to sink his teeth into her bones. Numbness and pain spread throughout her limbs. Yunshushu frowned, but she heard Muyaja's deep and cold voice. "Don't interfere with each other." "Yunshushu, who gave you the right to make your own decisions?" Let me tell you, this is impossible. She was stunned. Muyaja looked up and held the back of her neck with one hand, forcing her to look at his face. Listen to me clearly. It's your business whether you want me or not. It's my business whether I want you or not. You have no right to interfere. You. Yin Shishir was so angry that she was at a loss for words. I want you for sure. Muyaja glared at her. Don't tell me that you and I belong in two different worlds. Yin Shishir, listen carefully. I, Muyaja, am your world. Do you understand? She wanted him to let her off. Not in this lifetime. At this moment, the vicious aura on his body was extraordinary. His fingers that were pinching her chin were filled with strength, as if he wanted to ruthlessly crush her bones. Not allowing her to escape, he stared into her eyes. Now, it's your turn to answer my question. Muyaja asked coldly, where else did he touch you? Yin Shishir was stunned. What? His gaze fell on her lips, and his fingertips rubbed against them repeatedly. Other than here, where else did he touch you? Speak. Yin Shishir suddenly realized that he was asking her where else Gu Xingze had touched her. You won't let me touch you, but you let him touch you? What was he saying? Yin Shishir flew into a rage out of humiliation. He didn't touch me. I saw it all. You're lying. Muyaja looked at her lips that were as red as blood because of his ravaging, and his eyes were filled with anger. He touched you here. That's work, okay? Don't use work as an excuse. Speak, where else did he touch you? Muyaja lifted a strand of her hair, and a fragrant scent wafted over. He questioned, did he touch you here? Yin Shishir shook her head, and her eyes were filled with shock. She was frightened by the man's almost paranoid possessiveness. What about here? His fingertips caressed her soft waist. Yin Shishir still shook her head. Muyaja, that's enough. Not enough. Muyaja reached his hand under her skirt, searching for her whereabouts. His cold fingertips and his touch made her shudder. Yin Shishir, do you know? Chapter 596. Needless to say, Muyaja had always been arrogant and would not tolerate any trespass on his territory. There was no doubt that he, too, regarded her as his territory's property. Hence, he gave Lin Fengtian an ultimatum. He forbade Yin Shishir from touching any member of the opposite sex in the production team, even if it was necessary for work. He was serious, he was not joking. Previously, when he flew straight to London for the acquisition project and left the country for half a month, he did think of bringing her with him. However, he knew that with Yin Shishir's character, she would not leave Yu behind to follow him overseas. He did not say anything, either. He had always respected her to the greatest extent. During the 10-odd days abroad, other than being busy with the acquisition project, he had been thinking about her all the time. He missed her crazily. It was as if he had gone mad. He had always been as arrogant as a king, never allowing himself to lower his head or compromise with anyone. He also did not allow himself to be restrained in any way. Alas, he seemed to have lost. He was actually crazy about a woman. It was unbelievable. He even had a trace of suspicion. Could it be that this woman had cast some kind of bewitching spell on him? Otherwise, why would he only want her? In the past, he did not care about marriage at all. Marriage was a grave? He did not think so. Marriage, to him, was not essential. It was just a way to tie up benefits in the Vanity Fair. For a wealthy family like the Mu family, it was beneath them to tie them down with marriage. However, his marriage was not up to him to decide. He would marry whoever Mu Xing liked. It didn't matter who his wife was. The marriage contract didn't mean anything to him at all. She seemed to want a family, though. During the few days in London, he seriously considered it. Since she liked him, she wanted a stable family. Did she not always want a family? Then, he would give her a family. So that she would not be homeless and have no one to rely on. He did not care whether she liked him or not. He did not care whether she wanted him or not. He wanted to add Muyaja's name to her life, stroke by stroke. He had always been an extremely stubborn man. He was in the past and even more so now. Either he did not want her, or he did not care. Or, he wanted her forever. The woman that he had set his mind on, no one, no matter what, could erase this person from his obsession. What did she do, though? She blacklisted his number. He thought that something had happened to her, so he rushed back to the country anxiously. When he entered the set, he saw this scene. He saw this woman holding another man and kissing him with a gentleness he had never seen before. From his angle, he could see the love and unconcealable love on her face. At that moment, his anger began to build up. Even if this was just an act, he was so jealous that he wanted nothing more than to tear Gu Xingzi to shreds. But this woman defended him again and again. She even disregarded the danger and stood in front of this man. What about him? Indifference, rejection, resistance, and even hysterically told him not to touch her. Very well, very well. Muyaja stared intently at her face, his eyes flashing with coldness. Yunshusher stared at him in shock. Her back was pressed against the hot hood of the car. The scorching sensation was similar to Muyaja's anger at this moment. Chapter 597. When they returned to the villa, Muyaja carried Yunshusher up expressionlessly. She struggled in his arms, but she couldn't resist at all. His arms were so strong and steady. Just the fact that he could smash through a blackboard with a single punch was enough to prove his strength. She raised her head, but could only see his proud jawline, which was tense and frozen. Along the way, the servants kept avoiding them in fear. They had always been good at reading people's expressions. Young master didn't look good. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to avoid him in time and would be implicated. Muyaja carried her into the bathroom in the master bedroom and placed her in the bathtub. Yunshusher's body was quickly submerged in the warm water. The bathtub was huge. It was 1 meter deep, 3 meters wide, and 5 meters long. Its capacity was shockingly large. Her body had just been thrown into the water, and the water quickly covered her head. Her body quickly sank into the water droplets. The warm water suddenly flowed into her nose, lips, and teeth. Yunshusher was caught off guard and choked on a mouthful of water. When she struggled to surface, Muyaja stood in front of the bathtub and sized her up expressionlessly. She was still wearing the set's clothes. She was wearing a middle school student uniform with a white shirt and an aqua blue pleated skirt. Her clothes were wet from the water and clung tightly to her body, ironing the curves of her exquisite body. Her white shirt was soaked in water, and her underwear could be vaguely seen. Her beautiful body was exposed to the air. But at this moment, she looked a little disheveled. Yunshusher stood there helplessly. Her face was half angry and half aggrieved. Her misty eyes glared at him angrily. Muyaja's heart ached a little. He couldn't help but want to pull her into his arms. His handsome eyes swept over her, landing on her 2 jade-like collarbones, her bright white skin, and her pair of jade-like legs. His eyes heated up. But when he thought of that dazzling scene, when he thought of her lips, wrists, and body that Gu Xingzi had touched, the thought of her being tainted by another man. He couldn't control his anger, and his sharp gaze was like a sword that wanted to pierce through her body. He then said, "Wash it clean. Wash away all the places where that man touched you." With that, he slammed the door and left. Yunshusher stared blankly at his back as he slammed the door and left. Bang! The violent slamming of the door seemed to shake the entire bathroom. His icy cold gaze just now had undoubtedly pierced her. Did he think she was dirty? Was he complaining that she had been touched by someone else? But nothing had happened between her and Gu Xingzi. He asked her to wash herself clean, but what about him? Could he clean every inch of his body that Mu Wanra had touched? Since he wanted her to be clean, fine, then she would do as he wished. Muyaja walked to the bar counter and opened a bottle of Lafite. He took a sip of the fragrant wine. He forced himself not to think about it, but he still couldn't control his emotions. Bang! He smashed the wine glass on the floor. It was as if he could only vent his anger by doing so. But it didn't seem to be enough to vent his anger. He waved his hand and swept a row of classic red wine on the table onto the floor, making a mess. Immediately, a servant came forward in fear and cleaned up the wreckage on the floor. Muyaja sat on the sofa for a full hour, but he didn't see her come out of the bathroom. Chapter 598. The moment he opened the door, he saw Yunshishir completely submerged in the bathtub. The bathtub was filled with foam, and her body was wrapped in a thick layer of foam. He felt as though a huge burden had been lifted off his shoulders. However, he immediately clenched his jaw and walked over with a heavy expression. Have you washed yourself clean? Yunshishir only cared about lowering her head and scrubbing her body vigorously. Her face was numb, and he didn't know how long she had been scrubbing like this. She used all her strength every time she scrubbed, as though she couldn't wait to scrape off a layer of skin. She acted as though she hadn't heard his question, as though she hadn't heard him at all. This woman was clearly angry with him. Her heart was clearly cold to him. Muyaja bent over with a gloomy expression and brushed away the layer of foam. However, his gaze turned cold. He saw that under the foam, her originally fair and flawless skin was now filled with a glaring dark red. However, it was as if she didn't feel any pain as she continued to scrub. Some of the especially tender areas actually started to bleed under her vigorous scrubbing. Damn it! What was she doing? Why was she scrubbing so hard? Didn't she feel pain? Her skin was so damned tender. Usually, he would be able to leave a red mark with just a gentle pinch, and it wouldn't dissipate for a long time. Even he couldn't bear to ravage her skin like this. What was she doing? Abusing herself? Using this as an excuse to provoke him? Taking revenge on him? Muyaja's heart ached. His heart ached so much that he wanted to snatch the bath towel from her hand. He was furious. Are you crazy? However, Yunshishir suddenly dodged. Then, she turned to look at him with a cold expression. Her lips curled into a cold arc. What did I do wrong again? Muyaja furrowed his brows. However, he saw her fling the bath towel covered in foam onto him. The flying foam splattered onto his tense and gloomy face. Yunshishir glared at him with bloodshot eyes. Didn't you want me to wash myself clean? What did I do wrong? I know you think I'm dirty. You're washing, but I'm washing as hard as I can. You figure it out. Muyaja grabbed her wrist and scolded, I didn't let you abuse yourself like this. Yunshishir smiled eerily. I'm not abusing myself. It's just that if I don't wash myself like this, how can I wash myself clean? Her words were getting more and more infuriating. He warned her not to try to provoke her. But what about him? Wasn't every word he said trying to infuriate her? Stab her? Humiliate her? She despised every part of him that Muwanra had touched. Would he wash it clean? Yunshishir rubbed more body wash. The bottle of body wash, which was originally full, was now empty. Since he wanted her to wash herself clean, she naturally had to make herself clean. Muyaja frowned and was filled with anger by her. At the moment, he had to endure it and picked up the bath towel to wipe her body. However, Yunshishir pushed him away fiercely. Don't touch me. Muyaja's face darkened. However, he saw her glaring at him fiercely. Every inch of his body was filled with disgust. Don't touch me. You despise me for being touched and dirty. I despise you for being touched and dirty by other women. Yunshishir snatched the bath towel from his hand and sneered coldly. Please wash your body clean before touching me. You're a germaphobe, but I'm one too. What do you mean by that? Muyaja's face was filled with anger. Chapter 599. She didn't give him a good look either as she returned the favor. Muyaja's face turned cold. He stretched out his long arm and turned her shoulders over. Speak. What did you mean by what you said just now? I don't mean anything else. I just think you're dirty. Yunshishir glared at him and said coldly, I'm not done yet. Please get out. You're not going to speak. Yun Shirshir continued to scrub her body, treating his words as air. The man lost his patience in the end. He pulled her into his arms and drained all the foam in the sink. He turned on the shower and started to scrub her body. Yun Shirshir pushed him, and water splashed all over him as she struggled. Muyaja wouldn't allow her to mess around, so he pressed her heavily into the bathtub and clamped her wrists tightly with one arm. In this way, she completely lost the ability to resist. The water quickly filled up, and he changed the tub of warm water again. Muyaja patiently helped her wipe her body. Yun Shirshir couldn't break free from him, so she gave up struggling and let him wipe all the foam off her body. He lowered his head and saw her stubborn face. On her fair face, her eyes were misty and her red lips were pursed into a line. Even when he was wiping her, he didn't know what to do and hurt her, but even so, she didn't make a sound. She was as stubborn as an injured little beast. It was as if she was suppressing herself and isolating herself from the world. However, she didn't think about who was the one overturning the world at this moment. He was displeased by her indifference. Muyaja pinched her chin and asked her, "Are you angry?" Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She ignored him and ignored him. No matter how many times he repeated himself, she turned a blind eye and treated him as air. She ignored him? Muyaja sneered. He wanted to see how long she could stand it. Yun Shirshir closed her eyes tightly, but she suddenly felt a strange sensation coming from a certain part of her body. She was shocked and her body shivered. However, he didn't allow her to escape and easily held her in his arms. Yun Shirshir glared at him angrily, her eyes red. Muyaja pressed her under his body. Just one arm pressed on her shoulder, and it was as if she was nailed. The difference in strength between the two of them was too great, and she couldn't fight him at all. She stared straight at him, watching as he took off his shirt with one hand and pressed his body down heavily. His thin lips sealed her tightly pursed lips. No matter how she tried to dodge, he had the ability to subdue her. The shower head was still spraying water. They let the warm water submerge their bodies. Muyaja pressed his lips against hers, unscrupulously and fiercely taking her. At first, she tried her best to endure and bite the root. Even if he was ruthless, she didn't make a sound. But Muyaja clearly wanted to torture her. She couldn't suppress the surging emotions in her body anymore. She couldn't help but moan and sink in it. Muyaja. She called out his name and made her last weak resistance. She reached out to push his shoulder, but he grabbed her hand. He looked down and sucked on her jade-like white fingertips. Gradually, his movements were no longer rash and gradually became gentle. Chapter 600. He carried her out of the bathroom. In the huge bedroom, he dominated the world. They spent the whole night together. He didn't remember how long it had been since he last touched her. He missed her so much that his body had been suppressed. In a daze, Yun Shirshir couldn't remember how many times he had done it with her. However, his domineering nature was once again evident in matters of the heart. He kissed her eyebrows, her lips, and her collarbone. "This is mine." Then, he kissed her shoulder blade, fingertips, and waist. "This is mine." He took her fiercely. Muyaja wanted her fiercely. "This can only belong to me." It was as if he wanted to carve his name, his breath, and his brand on her body. "Yun Shirshir, every inch of your body is mine." Yun Shirshir suddenly cried and complained uncontrollably. "What about you? Do you belong to me?" Muyaja paused in his actions as he looked at the woman who had suddenly burst into tears. "Do you belong to me here?" She touched his lips. "Do you belong to me here too?" She stroked his chest. "Did you say these words to Muwanru? Did you kiss her lips and want her like you want me? If I'm yours, what about Muwanru?" He was jealous. How could she not be jealous? He was mad with jealousy. How could she not be mad with jealousy? They were not equal. How could he ask her to belong to him completely? At dawn, Muyaja went into the bathroom to take a shower. Wearing a bathrobe, he walked slowly to the window and lit a cigarette expressionlessly. With the sound of the lighter, the mellow smell of burning tobacco filled the room. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. A wisp of pure and thick smoke dispersed from between his lips. Through the reflection of the window, the person on the bed was curled up helplessly in a deep sleep. He walked to the bed and sat on the edge. He lowered his head to look at her sleeping face. Even in deep sleep, her delicate eyebrows were still tightly knitted. Her black hair was scattered around the pillow, contrasting with her fair skin. She was inconceivably beautiful. He had done it a few times. Perhaps it was too hard, so her face was full of exhaustion. Muyaja reached out and lifted a strand of her hair. He lowered his eyes and sniffed the fragrance of her hair. Taking a deep breath, his handsome eyes suddenly opened slightly. Her words rang in his ears. You want me to belong to you. Do you belong to me too? If I'm yours, what about Mu Wanru? Does she belong to you too? Do you belong to her too? With his keen intuition, he guessed that something must have happened during this period of time. Mu Wanru? Did Mu Wanru tell her something? It was just a guess. Before she left the country, he had specially assigned a group of bodyguards to protect her no matter where she went. According to the report, she had been filming for the past few days and had not had much contact with anyone else. When Yun Shishir woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. The curtains were tightly drawn, and the thick darkness in the bedroom was almost suffocating. There was no one beside the bed. Holding her groggy head, she sat up on the bed and lifted the blanket. She had unknowingly changed into a bathrobe and her body had been meticulously cleaned. Chapter 601. Yun Shishir heaved a sigh of relief. She struggled to move her body, only to realize that her thighs were sore and swollen. Why did it hurt so much? Memories of their passionate night came back to her, and her face turned red all the way to her ears. She frowned and tried to move her thighs. She lifted the blanket and got off the bed. Only then did she realize what it was, and her legs went weak. Her whole body felt like it was falling apart, and she could barely stand. She held on to the bedside table and took deep breaths to calm her heartbeat. She then walked into the bathroom to wash up. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of the red hickeys on the back of her neck in the mirror. She lifted the collar of her bathrobe and saw that her collarbone and body were covered in crisscrossing hickeys. It was a ghastly sight. This man was extraordinarily domineering in bed. After Yun Shishir got dressed and washed up, she opened the bedroom door. Outside the door, a row of servants stood respectfully and reverently, their expressions respectful. Miss Yun, good morning. Their simultaneous greetings gave her a fright. Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment. She looked around and saw a row of uniformed servants standing by the door with respectful and courteous smiles on their faces. You all. Yun Shishir put her hands behind her back uneasily. She subconsciously clutched her collar in an attempt to cover up the hickeys he had left on her body. Young master has gone out. Lunch is ready for you. Sitting at the dining table, Yun Shishir looked at the sumptuous spread on the table. Even though it looked, smelled, and tasted good, she was not in the mood to taste it. It was as if she was chewing on wax. The Mu family. Mu Yaja had just entered the house when he saw Mu Xing sitting on a chair with a cane. Mu Wanru was standing beside him, gently massaging his shoulders. Seeing him return, Mu Xing's face darkened instantly. His face was ashen, and his gaze, as sharp as an eagle's, landed on him. It was frightening. Mu Yaja curled his lips. Grandpa. Mu Xing was inexplicably furious. He slammed his cane on the table, and a violent aura rushed toward him. Do you still see me as your grandfather? Mu Yaja stood at the door and glanced at Mu Wanru from the corner of his eyes. The latter shrunk her shoulders when she saw his fierce gaze, and a timid fear appeared on her face. Mu Xing was furious. Suppressing his anger, he asked, I heard that you returned to the country yesterday, but you didn't come home. Where did you go last night? Mu Yaja's gaze fell on his grandfather, his face calm and composed. Grandpa, I came home to announce something. Answer my question first. Mu Xing's anger had yet to subside, so he was not in the mood to listen to him. He threw a magazine at him. Mu Yaja did not reach out to catch it. The magazine fell to the ground with the cover facing up. It was a photo taken by the media at Huanyu's annual cocktail party. In the photo, Yun Shishir was dressed in splendid attire. She looked back and smiled. It was just the side of her face, but it was stunning. Who is this woman? Mu Yaja glanced at her coldly before retracting his gaze and keeping quiet. Mu Wanru immediately bent over to persuade him. Grandpa, calm down. She's just a small-time celebrity in the entertainment industry. Why are you angry over this? Chapter 602. Such a woman can forget about stepping into the Mu family. Grandpa. Don't make things difficult for him. Anyway, his heart has never been on me. I'm already used to it. Mu Wanru pretended to be aggrieved. She pretended to speak up for her grandpa, but she was secretly pleased with herself. Humph. With Mu Xing backing her, what was Yun Shishir to her? Even if Mu Yaja wanted to marry Yun Shishir, with Mu Xing stopping him, it was impossible for him to step into the Mu family. Her heart toward Mu Yaja was completely dead. This man's heart, from the beginning to the end, had never been with her. This man never had her in his eyes. Even when he got engaged to her 6 years ago, it was only because of Mu Xing that he was reluctant to do so. The wedding was postponed again and again because he treated her as nothing. He had never touched her before. If a man did not even touch a woman, it could only mean that she meant nothing to him. It was not that she had not tried and tried her best, but even when she stripped naked in front of him, this man did not even look at her. His eyes were even filled with disgust. She had the title of the Mu family's young madam, but it was only in name. Right now, though, the most important thing for her was to establish her status as young Madam Mu and get married to Mu Yaja as soon as possible. Besides that, so what if Mu Yaja did not love her? With wealth and glory, she did not care if she could not win Mu Yaja's heart. This was the sad part of a rich family's marriage. Thinking of this, she felt relieved. Mu Xing did not know what Mu Wanru was thinking. He only saw the lonely and sad expression on her face. His heart ached for her tolerance and compromise. He felt even more indignant for her. He turned to glare at Mu Yaja, his face flushed red with anger. Yaja, look at how Wanru treats you and how you treat her. Grandpa doesn't care if you're just toying with that woman or not. As an experienced person, Grandpa can tell you that none of the actresses in the entertainment industry are good. They look pure on the surface, but deep down, they're lewd and despicable. I don't care about anything. Anyway, Wanru's status as the legal wife is right here, and no one can replace her. Mu Yaja sneered and curled his lips. Legal wife? Mu Xing did not notice the playfulness and mockery that flashed past his eyes. His anger dissipated a little under Mu Wanru's consolation. Calmly, he said, if you like any woman, even if you want to marry her as your second wife, Grandpa won't have any objections as long as the girl's family background is clean. But which woman in the entertainment industry didn't want to climb up the social ladder? Even if she marries into the Mu family as a concubine, I will never allow it. Climb the social ladder? Yun Shishir needed to be rich? Mu Yaja even suspected that if he let Yun Shishir marry into the Mu family, her precious son might not even care about the Mu family. A 7-year-old child controlled the world's #1 toy empire. Just as he said, this child was not as simple as he thought. You might not even care about the Mu family. Yun Tianyo's arrogant words still rang in his ears. Mu Yaja, let me tell you, Mommy is a treasure in my heart. If you want to dote on my mommy, you must do so legitimately. Chapter 603. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, wanted a family. Then, he would give them a family. A family of 4 with him, her, and 2 children. His son was more outstanding than him. At a young age, he already had a net worth of hundreds of millions. The Mu family was nothing to him. Mu Yaja's thin lips parted slightly, and his words were as cold as ice. Grandpa, I think you're mistaken about something. Hearing him speak, the old man was baffled. His eagle-like eyes narrowed as a strange feeling arose in his heart. What do you mean? What did I get wrong? This woman will be my wife, the future young mistress of the Mu family, and the woman I've set my mind on. What? Hearing this, the old man was instantly enraged, but more than that, he was in disbelief. He had watched him grow up, so he knew him better than anyone else. Mu Yaja had been an outstanding child from a young age due to his strict etiquette. He was different from those second-generation heirs from other wealthy families who were ignorant and incompetent. They spent their days indulging in debauchery, seeking pleasure, and having countless women by their side. Mu Yaja was almost cold and indifferent toward women. He had once thought that his precious grandson was just playing around with this woman on a whim, that was all. When he got sick of her one day, he would settle down. Who would have thought that he would actually tell him that he was serious about this? He was serious about marrying that woman and even said something as unreasonable as the woman I've set my mind on? If this woman was a well-bred young lady of the same social status as the Mu family, it would be fine. His grandfather would also approve of her. However, this woman was an actress in the entertainment industry. Such a woman had no right to step through the Mu family's doors. A ruthless look surfaced on the old man's face. He glared coldly at Mu Yaja and bellowed, "How dare you? Are you ignoring Grandpa's words? Didn't I tell you before that such a woman can forget about stepping through the Mu family's doors? Did you not take Grandpa's words to heart?" Mu Wanru was the first to interrupt him. "Grandpa, don't be angry. You know it, too. Which woman in the entertainment industry wasn't good at scheming?" He was very shrewd. Some women were born to be good at seducing men. She was the reincarnation of a vixen. At most, Zhou was just on a whim. Even if he wants to marry that woman and make her his concubine, I will agree. Mu Xing retorted angrily, "Agree to what?" "Wanru, it's not that Grandpa wants to scold you, but why are you so heartless? If such a woman marries into the Mu family, it's obvious that she's here to compete with you. You've always been pure and innocent. Do you want Grandpa to watch you scheme against another woman? You don't care about yourself, but Grandpa cares about you." Mu Wanru smiled shyly and mumbled, "But Aja likes that woman, doesn't he? There was nothing he could do about it. I also hope that he can dote on me more, but feelings can't be forced." Mu Yaja's handsome eyes narrowed as his gaze landed on Mu Wanru. She was born with an extremely pleasing mouth. Her words were sweeter than honey and could coax the old man into submission. It was no wonder that he doted on her so much, to the point of doting on her to the bone. She usually put in a lot of effort into him.